Why, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to Nightcap for January 21st, 2022. Research Chamber. The research continues. So, if people don't know, we got a big fancy debate coming up next Friday night, right around this time. Right around this time. We've got some nice posters for it. We're going to start promoting it. I'm going to try to cut a promo for it this week if I got the time. Let's make sure I got my shit shared here. And there it is. Can you imagine it? Can you believe it? Past and future guest, Mr. Prophet, will be standing off against Nico Stubler. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. Yeah, so that's going to be happening next Friday, 9 p.m. Other fun announcements before we get into the business of the night. We have a Reddit page now. We have a Reddit page. Link is in the description. Oh, what a wonderful thing. Big Paul stepped it up. Got us a Reddit page. And there's tons of stuff on there. Lots of fun stuff. You'll probably see us getting banned from many of other pages. Many other r/s while we have some fun talking to people that want to genocide cats for the vegan cause. Ooh, whoa, lad. Let me tell you what. I've never been really a big Redditor. I'm not very familiar with the website. I just never really got into it. I've never been into message board culture all that much. And yeah, things have come to light, my dudes. Things have come to light. A lot of crazies out there. A lot of wacky folks. And today we just kind of just had like a brief kind of fun like back and forth with some people in r/vegan, and they are seriously considering whether or not it's ethical to own pets, which apparently is kind of a big thing in the vegan community at the moment. Whether or not you can even do that. What am I looking for here? Okay. I don't know how to do this. Big Paul says, already banned from 4 groups and we weren't trying. Bunch of bitches. I know. We went on a light touch. I did something what I thought was satire. I thought I was like being satirical. I thought I was being funny. So I wrote like some kind of like a ridiculous thing. And it didn't get really any upvotes or anything. It was pretty ignored. But one of the things I wrote did get some eyeballs. Let's see here. Buying any pet from a breeder is definitely not vegan, but adopting a pet is. Now, this is also another one of their big points of contention, and this is something amongst normies as well, non-vegan people. Oftentimes they'll throw that out there, be like, "Yo, go to a shelter. Don't go to a breeder. Don't go to these baby mills, these puppy mills. Don't do it. Don't do it." And I think, in some ways, I agree, which is interesting because I have like a family of dog breeders. Like, there's a lot of dog breeding is in my blood. It's in my people's blood for some reason. Um, so this guy, he says that, and this dude's like, "Sucks. My dad just randomly got us a dog from a breeder without talking it through with anyone. But now that we have a dog, I've got to say, I love him a lot." So this guy's dad comes there, probably surprises his family. Thought it would be like a really nice thing. He's like, "Dad, was that puppy ethically sourced?" So I wrote back, and it's this is doing pretty well for me. This is big numbers for me. This is solid Zoobox numbers, as we like to say around here. If you want to do this and come away clean of conscience, you should adopt the dog to someone else and then have them adopt it back to you. You know what I'm saying? Hey, what's up, CC? How's it going? Glad to see you. Good to see you here. But yeah, so tonight we're gonna be delving back into the world of vegans. So on Monday night's episode, I unlisted. I'm unlisting it until after the debate. I will probably also unlist this one until after the debate. So if you want to rewatch it or you need to come back, you can either contact me for a link through like Twitter or something like that. I can send it to your DM or just wait until it's back. It'll be back up like that Friday night after the debate. Not for any. I just don't want to come off like a hostile prick to this dude. He's being gracious enough to give us some of his free time. Okay. And it's hard to get people. It's hard to get people out of their echo chambers because he's not just like debating somebody about whether or not it's right or wrong to be a vegan. He's debating a butcher, like a real butcher, guy who has his own business. Past and future guest, Mr. Prophet, Butcher Pete. So this guy has his own. He's a real butcher. He does it for a living. He has kind of an ethos about it too. He's got some feelings about it. So that's even more impressive because you don't often find stuff like that. Most of the time, like, you go to a Reddit or something like that, and it's a complete fucking it's a complete echo chamber. It's like not fun anymore. I think a lot of these message boards things, because if you do anything, you do a little trolling, you give a little pushback, you make a joke, they'll just ban you like immediately. CC says hostility is in the eye of the beholder. Funny that. Fair enough. That's true. But I just don't like being a prick. I'm good guy Sean. I'm nice guy Sean. I'm a pretty amicable dude. I don't want to be a prick. We're inviting him to our house. We're gonna be good hosts. Well, I will be a good host. So we're just gonna get into some vegan videos. We're gonna look at both sides of it, though. I think we're gonna watch some pro vegan stuff. Let's watch some pro vegan stuff. On Monday night, we went through watching Nico's Instagram, the stuff that he's going to, the guy that is coming for the debate on Friday. We looked at his stuff, which ended up being an entire episode. I didn't even mean it to be that way. But we're just gonna see here. Maybe we can steel man some stuff a little bit, and we'll just talk through it. It'll be fun. And then on Monday night on D Live, we're gonna be watching I think an anti-factory farming pro-vegan documentary called Dominion. I'm going to be watching that over on D Live. So if you want to do that, you can come join me. I may have some guests for that, so it could be a good time. We're going to get as far as we can in it. It's like a 2-hour movie, so we'll get as far as we can. The burner says the butcher has a lot to live up to for this debate. If the dude eats crow, then all those vegans will say they butchered a butcher. No pressure. Fair enough. No pressure, Prophet. All right. And also, if the stream just dies randomly, it's because we're having some inclement weather where I live. I live in South Carolina. We're getting that rare snowstorm or potential snowstorm. So if it just disappears, that's all she wrote, folks. But anyways, let's get into it. So this is from a channel called, what's the name of the channel? I like to shout out the channels. The Vegan Activist. He made this 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now. And we'll see what he has to say. What is veganism?
Veganism isn't about being perfect.
But it kind of is. Prophet says, I'm not the one who has to take an injection of synthetic vitamins to survive my own diet. I think I'll be fine. He's going to come in with a karate chop.
It isn't about being superior. It's about looking beyond ourselves, thinking about how our choices affect others, and choosing to live as compassionately as we can.
I'll see. He's going for the more like the esoteric route, more like spiritual feelings. Feelings. What's good about
It's about doing the
feelings?
right thing in a world where apathy and injustice is the norm. And veganism isn't a diet. It's not a religion. It's a lifestyle. And it's easy. Right now, all around the world, animals are in trucks on their way to slaughterhouses. Buildings that we've carefully constructed so that we can systematically kill. And they're terrified. They're hungry and thirsty, and all they have is each other, staring wide-eyed in fear, wondering what's coming next.
You see, like things like this, right? And this is always the angle that they start off any of these conversations with is the brutality of some of the facilities that engage in factory farming. And I think it's something that everybody can say, like, that's not great. There's better ways to do this shit. Or there maybe, oh, shit, I don't know. There's a lot of people to feed. But some of it does seem, a little over the line, even in my uninformed opinion. My opinion is super uninformed. This is an exploratory mission for me, just as much as it's for anybody else. Uh, the burner says, "You're the butcher." That's for you, Prophet. Hagbert says, "No mercy till he's eating steak." Whoa, feelings. Big Paul says this narrator could have done Animal Passions. Oh, he does definitely has. He definitely has the Animal Passions vibe. I'm wondering if it's going to blow Nico's mind when I immediately agree with him about being against factory farming. Yeah, that's what I'm curious about because, I guess you could consider yourself an ethical butcher. He's got a lot of opinions, a lot of thoughts about the way these things are done. So I'm actually kind of curious about where the conversation is going to go because we're going to have to start and kind of define terms and the things that we agree on and disagree on. And when I say you, I mean you guys. Or we.
And when the trucks arrive, they're forced off the chutes where they walk to their own death. Billions of animals are queuing up to be slaughtered, and they're so scared. There's the smell of blood in the air, and they don't want to die. Living, feeling animals go in there and come out chopped up into hundreds of pieces so that we can eat their corpses. But the worst part about it is that we know this is happening but choose to ignore it. We've been told that animal products are the best source of nutrients like protein, iron, and calcium, but their benefits have been largely exaggerated in the interest of profit. We don't need to eat dead animals to be healthy.
So I have a feeling, is this going to be a puff piece? Because he's not. I have a feeling he's not going to qualify much of what he's saying, especially when it comes to stuff like that, like the nutrients and the where you derive your nutrients from. Where do you have to get it if you eat supplements? If you have to take supplements, and the effect that has on the ecology of the environments in which those things are produced.
But if we do, eventually they will kill us.
Got a beefy boy in the house.
Animal agriculture is the single most destructive industry on the planet. At our current rate of environmental destruction, no child under the age of 5 will make it past retirement age. So many people choose to support this on a daily basis, even though most of us couldn't kill the
Look
animal.
at these sick fucks feeding their children. CC says, inflammatory language, not hearing too many useful facts apart from stating the obvious and no clarification on why animals are not beneficial. Exactly.
Ourselves. But it doesn't have to be this way. And I just wish I could help you understand because I was the same. I didn't know.
He's like, I was a burger addict.
But then I forced myself to look. I made myself think about what's going on, and I realized I couldn't look into the eyes of an animal and say, My taste buds are worth more than your life. I realize that we don't need to harm animals to live a healthy, fulfilled life.
We can marry them. We can fuck them because they're equals. That's one of the more interesting things. It was one of the Nico videos from Monday nights where he basically refers to animals as people, kind of grants them anthropomorphic personage, and was making suggestions about that, like what I said, like they're peers. Well, so what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? Oh no, my connection's not being cool. That sucks. Prophet says animal agriculture is the most destructive industry on the planet. Dog, have you heard about the military industrial complex or etc.? Am I still alive? Is this thing still working? Losing viewers?
So I became vegan. Veganism is a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude as far as is possible and practicable all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose.
All right, before we continue, let me see. How bad is the stream? How bad is the stream? If you can hear me. How fucked up is it? Is it coming back? It's coming back, I think. I don't know if it's StreamYards or if it's fucking my internet. I can never tell with this guy. I like StreamYards. Hagrid says it's fine. Thanks, Hagrid. I appreciate you, buddy.
Which by extension promotes the development and use of animal-free alternatives for the benefit of humans, other animals, and the environment. In dietary terms, it denotes the practice of dispensing with all products derived wholly or partly from animals. Everyone wants to change the world, but no one really knows how to do it. But veganism is an attainable goal. It's something we can all do right now, and it makes a difference. You can stand up at least 3 times a day and say, I'm opposed to injustice. I care about my health and I care about the state of this planet.
Like it's there's such self-righteous indignation. It's just so, and then he says it's like, oh, it's not a religion, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. Well, there's a lot of ideological ramifications. There's a lot of that kind of that religious language is couched in here. This is not just a lifestyle, it is a cause. It is something to fight for.
And your actions are aligned with your beliefs. And so many people wonder, why vegan and not just vegetarian? It's easy for most of us to understand.
Because vegetarians are fucking pussies. That's why. They don't own it. They won't own it. The burner says the way he says animals is weird. That's because he's turned on. CC says it's not economically viable. There's not enough land, not to mention the animal life lost to prep the land for propagation. Exactly. Like what do we do? So we liberate animals in the way that they would like to, like the ones that already exist, because they'll give out statistics like there's 70 million cows, 70 million factory farm animals, and they all need to be released immediately. Well, what would you do with them?
Understand that eating meat means an animal has to be killed. But realizing the harm dairy and eggs cause requires an understanding of how the animal industries work, which has been hidden from us all our lives. The common belief is that cows produce milk all their lives for humans to drink, and that it causes no harm or suffering. But like all mammals, cows produce milk for their babies to grow, from calves to cows and bulls.
I wonder if he's going to make the argument that humans should only eat human or drink human milk. I've heard that before. I've heard that several. I think I heard that from like my 3rd grade teacher.
Because humans desire the milk that was intended for them. The babies are taken away from their mothers.
Egbert says, gather up a few and ask Prophet how to break them apart.
Immediately. Which is one of the most emotionally devastating things anyone can ever do. The males are usually confined for about 8 weeks, then killed for veal. The females endure the same life as their mothers. They are repeatedly impregnated and milked until they're around 5 years old, when they're considered
look
too
how
spent
happy
to
this
produce.
guy is. Look how happy he is. He takes joy in his work. So, yep, just throwing a bunch of cum up in these cows. Taking that
Profitable
milk.
quantities of milk. If left alone, cows can live over 20 years. but in the dairy industry it would be too expensive to keep them alive. So they're sent to the same slaughterhouses as their mothers and babies and
And
distant
this is,
relatives in the
I have a feeling this is going to be the most of the video, because it kind of just, it becomes redundant after a couple minutes, because it just describes factory farming in different ways over and over and over again. There's a episode of Nightcap from a couple weeks ago, A Night for Animal Passions, where we watched like a vegan activist talk about bestiality, or at least that was the title of the video. But it ended up really just being about factory farming. It was not really about bestiality, not really. Prophet says, I killed 3 animals today. All of them died painlessly and in peace. No suffering. You don't feel anything when a 30-06 turns your brain into a smoothie on impact. Mobile slaughter for the win. And the burner says, Slaughter Master.
beef industry. It all ends with a bolt to the head and a knife to the throat. And the egg industry works in a similar way. Hens are bred to produce egg-laying chickens. They're sorted by sex, with the males separated from the females. Since the males are useless to the egg industry, they're suffocated or ground up alive and used for cheap meat. The females are debeaked and made to produce eggs until they are no longer profitable. Hens can normally live over 6 years old, but in the egg industry they are sent off for slaughter around 1 to 2 years.
Oh, yeah. Big Paul says, no hot bull action from bite-sized vegan. Don't remind me. It was painful. Painful for us all.
And these basic violations of freedom occur whether it's an organic, free-range, or so-called high-welfare farm.
Where's the quotes? Where's the scare quotes? There should be scare quotes around it. Free range? Are you fucking serious, dude? Prophet says, I had a bull cock in my hand today, not gonna lie.
Whether it's an organic, free-range, or so-called high-welfare farm. It only takes a small amount of extra effort to form new habits. But once you've changed, it becomes easy. There are a number of important videos and documentaries to watch.
How do they think all of these other things are produced? That they get, like, he has a table full of shit that he bought at a grocery store. Like, this is not like locally sourced stuff. This is not, he went to fucking Whole Foods probably.
To make the switch as simple as possible. To learn the facts about veganism, watch the films Earthlings, Forks Over Knives, and Cowspiracy. And the most important vegan speech you can watch is the one by Gary Rofsky.
Gary Rofsky.
For help progressing to a vegan lifestyle, check out the Grocery Guide and other videos from Cheap Lazy Vegan. There are hundreds of recipe websites and channels for making great vegan food. And I have complete guides to vegan clothing, cosmetics, and food, as well as a vegan starter kit podcast.
He's basically like implicitly saying, he's like, I know you're a piece of shit, and I know you really only care about how good things taste. Because you really cannot rise to the occasion if you can't have something that is like a parallel, something that's like analogous to the things you already enjoy. Brissinger says, fuck Moby. Hagbert says, are you saying you can't grow avocado in New York? Well, if AOC had anything to say about it, you definitely can. You got to have that dark magic.
People think becoming vegan means you have to give up everything you love. But giving up cruel, harmful products that you become addicted to is a liberation. Nowadays, there are vegan versions of every meal you can think of. There are vegan cakes, chocolates, milks, cheeses, and meats. But the healthiest way to live is...
So what's your excuse? Buy now.
Just to eat the plants. Being vegan is easy as soon as you make the decision. But the hardest part about it is realizing that our friends, family, and everyone we love...
no vegan is as happy as this kid right now eating a fucking Happy Meal. I can tell you that right now.
support such harmful industries with little to no second thought.
Says it in the commercial.
Once you make the connection, it's maddening to realize how conditioned we've all been to think exploiting and abusing innocent animals is okay. When you understand the enormity of destruction and injustice going on at the moment, you'll feel hopeless. But there's a growing...
I wonder what they're going to do with all the displaced employees, all the displaced labor, when they get to live in their vegan utopia. What are all those people supposed to do? Not everybody can, borrow money from mom and dad.
Community of people living in alignment with their beliefs. They're all around the world doing their best to change things, and you can be a part of that too. It's so simple. There are so many resources out there, so many people dedicating their lives to making it easy. All it takes is a small group of people to make a difference, for the individuals to make a stand against injustice. Because ignorance can't last forever.
Tens, dozens of people come out to these events. Cece says, at Profit, you like bulls, eh? Me too. JK.
And the
Just like
world
Jack
is
Murphy's
changing.
wife.
There's no excuse for supporting what's going on right now.
Hagbert says, so many man buns. It's interesting. Like the people that are the most active, the most vocal, the most out there that have like social media presences, YouTube pages, they all like conform to stereotypes of what you would imagine in your mind's eye, like a caricature of a vegan activist, and they all conform to it. There's definitely a look. There's a vibe.
Most people don't realize how much their everyday actions affect others. But there comes a time when ignorance is no longer an excuse. Once you know, you have to change. If we don't change out of compassion, we will be forced to by desperation.
You've been duped. They're killing you, they're killing the animals, and they're killing this planet. And those blinders are on nice and tight.
You know, and I honestly believe that the vast majority of people
Oh, look, it's the bite-sized vegan. Hello, friend.
who consume animals and their byproducts are not doing so out of malice or inherent evil, but out of ignorance of the truth.
My goal is simple. All I want to do is reconnect people with animals. Awaken some emotions.
It's like, you wouldn't eat your dog, would you? Brissinger said, he who makes a beast out of himself takes away the pain of being a man. So let's graze. Cece says, it would make more sense to focus on the spatial issue to grow food rather than to try to convince entire populations to change their lifestyle choices. This compassion baiting is useless and transparent. 1000%, because it's not solution orientated. It's all emotionally driven. It's all emotional language. It's not about like what would be a better process or a better way to do things. They just want you to whole cloth just change like a light switch. And it's not very practical. And they don't have a lot of practical answers either.
Feelings and some logic that has been buried and suppressed intentionally by our society.
If you're told the lie enough times, it becomes part of your reality. And if enough people are taught that lie, well, now it becomes part of the culture. And if that culture then passes that misinformation along to the next generation, well, now it becomes tradition. And what we have to remember is that just because we have a tradition doesn't mean it's morally acceptable.
To think we have such a thing called a slaughterhouse where people are employed to grab an animal, use electric prods to force it to go where they want.
Can you believe it?
To jam bolts in their heads, to slice their throats up, hang them from chains and watch them die as blood drips out of their throat and their legs kick desperately. To think that even exists in the numbers that it does. We're not talking about there's a few bad people around that do that. We're talking about this is the norm. If we can't stop and look at that and say, holy crap, what have we done? If we can't face that, we will not be able to face anything.
Every single person here who has made the connection has a duty to act on behalf of animals and take that seriously, because this is not some mundane diet choice. This is the difference between enslavement and freedom.
Brissinger says, so I guess this means that milk is racist. Milk is racist, isn't it? Systemic milkism. Yeah, it's coming back around. Hagbert says, can you believe we have something called the funeral home where people gather to gawk at corpses? What have we become? What are we doing? Cece says, this kind of framing of rhetoric is why young people are so combative these days. It's a shame because we should be looking at solutions, but together instead of competing for brownie points. Yeah, it's like just very empty virtue signaling, for a lack of a better way to put it. It's not about so it's just about making themselves feel good, like they're part of something. So they can go and give speeches to 50 people in a room and think that they did something. It's just that is modern activism really, like in a nutshell. It's not there to actually produce a result. It's there to you feel better about yourself.
Torture and peace between death and life. This is serious, and you understand it, and you are part of this revolution.
So the difference between someone that finds veganism easy and someone that finds veganism hard is the person that finds it easy is thinking about the victim. The person that finds it hard is thinking about themselves.
One person does make a difference. And together, we are changing the world.
The world, everybody. Well, there's that. Do we want to watch? I mean, I have a TED Talk. Yeah, that's the next one. So I have this TED Talk. It's one of the guys that was in the video. He goes by Earthling Ed, a vegan educator, and this is him going to debunk every argument against veganism. This is what this TED Talk is. It's about 20 minutes long. So let's check it out. Let's check it out. And this one's a little quiet, so if because I just kind of scrubbed through it to see what it was. So if it's too quiet, just let me know, and I can use a little app to sound boost it.
So when I say the word vegan to you, what do you think of? I'm sure for many of you, you think of, oh, vegans. I mean, why can't they just live and let live? I personally have no problem with you being vegan, but can you not?
See you later, Bursinger. He says he's out. He says, fuck Moby. TED or TEDx. The distinction is important. TEDx. Yeah, TEDx Bath University. Ed
Your
Winters.
views and just respect my personal choice to eat animal products. For some of you, you might be thinking, no, vegan. I could never be vegan. I love the taste of cheese far too much for that. And some of you might just be confused and thinking,
how easy is it to get a TEDx talk? I see like a lot of just very random people get TEDx talks. Didn't even Sam Hyde got one.
eating meat's the circle of life. And after all, other animals eat other animals, so why can't I? These are a selection of the things that I used to say when someone said the word vegan to me. But I also used to say that vegans were crazy. And that no.
What is he, like 25? How long ago was this? Were you like 16? 16? Oh, people used to come up to me and say, oh, vegans are fucking, they're nuts. They're nuts. Hey, what's up, Trami? All these kids in the audience are here as part of a class assignment, most likely. Also, hey, what's up?
No one should ever go vegan. But now I am vegan. And so how on earth did that happen? It's a question I often ask myself. And so to try and understand why it is that I'm now vegan, I want to go through all the main arguments that I used to make and show you why I changed my mind. And so the first one is personal choice. Can we morally justify not being vegan by saying that it's our personal choice to consume animal products? Well, interestingly, yes, it is our personal choice to consume animal products.
No shit. Jackson says, near impossible to sustain a healthy vegan diet. It's incredibly expensive and time consuming. Yes, exactly. It's not for the poor. It's not for the average man. All the supplements and whatnot you have to buy, for sure.
In the same way that it's our personal choice to abuse a dog or beat a cat. In essence, what I'm saying is that every action that we make is a choice that we personally choose to make. And so to imply that it's morally justifiable to use animals because it's a personal choice would mean that every action that we as humans can make must also be morally justifiable because every action is a personal choice. And so is it morally justifiable to randomly assault a stranger on the street? Is it morally justifiable to go to a shelter, rescue a dog, bring them home, and then abuse them yourself? No, of course it's not. Because those choices have a victim, someone who suffers negatively because of the personal choice that we have made. And so consequently, the inclusion of a victim removes any possibility for moral justification.
Did you guys hear the one about personal choice?
One of the reasons that I went vegan in the first place was for personal choice. the personal choice of the trillions of animals who are killed every single year, who, if granted their choice, would just like to live their life without human-inflicted exploitation. Remember, animals don't willfully walk onto the kill floor of a slaughterhouse. They are forced there against their will. Any notion of choice has been removed for them. And so when we cite personal choice as a justification, whose personal choice are we considering other than our own? And
Like, see, this is another thing. They make this, they presuppose that animals have the same cognitive ability and awareness that you do, that you're not higher on the food chain, that you're not higher on the evolutionary ladder. You're just the same. So if you felt that way, if you were to feel that way, well, then obviously they would. They want to anthropomorphize it. Prophet says, Is it mostly justifiable to save a dog from a shelter, take him home, and deep fry that motherfucker? Personal choice. Personal choice.
if it is a choice, then why would we choose to be cruel? And so we might then think, yes,
Big Paul comes in. The dog coming from a shelter is key. Exactly. Exactly. Adopt the animals that you're going to eat. Okay.
but the difference is these animals are bred for that purpose, which is why your example of abusing a dog is disingenuous, because that's just needless suffering. To which I would say yes, but most of us find dogfighting to be morally abhorrent. Yet many dogs used in fighting are bred specifically for that purpose. Doesn't make it acceptable. And so we might then say after that, yes, but dogfighting is illegal in this country. But farms and slaughterhouses are allowed under law. They are lawful practices. But does legality equal morality? Is something acceptable just because the law says so? I mean, if that was true, then dogfighting would be moral in the countries where it's legal. And if we apply that way of thinking, let's take it to a human situation.
Good God. Tarami says they also disregard the fact that people may just not care. We inflict suffering on one another all the time in more or less direct ways, and most people accept that. It's part of life. It's part of life.
Is female genital mutilation a moral and acceptable practice in the countries where it's legally condoned? And let's take this argument and this line of
Yeah, why don't you become an advocate for that? Why don't you stand up against that? Why don't you make t-shirts and go out and interview people and bother them on the street about female genital mutilation? Maybe you could do some good in the world.
thinking and apply it to the culture and tradition excuse as well. Is it justifiable to kill dogs during the Yulin Dog Meat Festival because the festival is a cultural event? Is it justifiable to slaughter dolphins in Japan or pilot whales in the Faroe Islands because those events are traditional? And again, using that example of female genital mutilation, is that a moral practice simply because it is cultural and traditional? Because the thing is, if we try to excuse using animals by saying, well, they form part of our culture and can be used in our traditions, we therefore have to make every cultural and traditional action and practice morally justifiable simply because they are cultural and traditional practices. And so we might get to the point when we say, well, that's all fair enough. But the thing is, we need to eat animal products to survive. In fact, they are optimal to our diet. And so the question becomes, are animal products a necessity? Now, the American Dietetic Association, which is the largest body of diet and nutrition professionals in the US, and is formed of over 100,000 certified practitioners.
Appeal to authority. Hagbert says, do circumcision next.
It's categorically stated.
He won't, because that's something that actually has real stakes, a real effect. People would actually be like, feel very strongly one way or another about something like that. And I think most people, I think like Tarami said, most people just kind of like don't really engage in this stuff. You know? It's hard to get people to care about something like this, especially with the ways that they frame it. The framing is so foreign to most people that it almost feels too abstract.
That a vegan diet is healthy, safe, and nutritionally adequate for all stages of life, including pregnancy, lactation, and infancy. This is also supported by the British Dietetic Association as well as the NHS. Furthermore, There is extensive and conclusive research and evidence that links our consumption of animal products to some of our leading diseases and illnesses, including heart disease, certain forms of cancer, type 2 diabetes, strokes. The issue of thriving on a vegan diet is not a contentious one within the scientific community.
Yes, if you eat unhealthy, if you overindulge, if you eat a lot of processed foods, you're probably going to have health problems. You got us, guy. You got us, Ed.
And therefore, consuming animal products will be deemed an unnecessary action. And so let's progress the argument and say, yes, but you're denying us of our nature. After all, we are omnivores. Have you seen our canine teeth? And we've always eaten meat. If your ancestors didn't eat meat, you wouldn't even be alive today. And so to begin with, many herbivorous animals do have canine teeth. Take the saber-toothed deer as an example, which means that...
So is he going to make the argument that we can evolve beyond that? Things can change just because it was doesn't mean it has to be. Jackson says nutritionally adequate is a very low bar. I agree. Real Ram in the cuts. You know what's crazy? Every food is bad in America. I don't know if every food is bad. Prophet says, I'm going to have 100% vegan mukbang during the debate. That's just going to be Oreos deep fried in canola oil. 10,000 calories, your school. Trami says, it's the hyper focus on assuming we do care that makes this a weak argument, rather than explaining why we should care.
Canines don't necessarily equate to meat eating. Furthermore, there's many people out there that believe that biologically and physiologically speaking, our bodies are more closely aligned to that of herbivorous animals rather than omnivorous animals. They point to the fact that our intestines are on average around 3 times longer than that of the average omnivore. The fact that our jaws, they grind side to side when we chew, like the jaws of herbivorous animals, and the fact that the hydrochloric acid in our stomach is comparatively weaker to carnivores, but also omnivores as well. But personally, I find that entirely irrelevant. I don't think it really matters.
Personally, I don't really care that you've evolved to be meat eaters. I don't really give a shit. It doesn't really conform to how I feel about things. So, whatever, guys. Whatever. These are small details.
As if we're herbivores or omnivores. I mean, just because we can physically do something doesn't mean that we are morally justified to do so. And because we don't have to eat meat, that means we can survive off plants. So biologically speaking, it makes no difference because we don't have to do it. And therefore, in the absence of necessity, there's the absence of justification as well. And so I also think it's a little bit logically dishonest, a bit disingenuous that we claim that we're somehow built to be intrinsically designed to kill animals, yet so many of us would never want to kill the animal ourselves. And so if we wouldn't want to kill the animal ourselves, why is it acceptable to pay for someone else to do it on our behalf?
I don't know. Why is it acceptable to pay for people to do a lot of things on our behalf, I suppose, if you want to go there. But also, I lost my thought. I'll come back to it.
I've always found it interesting when I try and show someone slaughterhouse footage and they say, don't show me that. That's going to put me off my food.
Yes, I can.
Why would
Hold on. I'm just gonna boost the volume on this video just slightly because it's very low. Big Paul asked me.
Of how animal products arrive on your plate put you off consuming them. That seems to make little to no sense to me. And also, why is it that we get upset when we see footage of animals being killed in gas chambers or animals struggling to survive as they desperately try and flee from the kill floor they're being forced onto? Let's take that idea of ancestors and run with that for a moment, because our ancestors used to do lots of horrible things. They would rape.
They would rape. Real Ram in the cut says, even if you don't eat animals, that don't make you healthy. No, it doesn't at all. I shared an anecdote on Monday night about a friend I had that tried to go vegan, not really knowing what he was doing. This is when I was very young. He was one of the roommates I had when I lived in Boston, a rich kid. Oh, who'd have thunk it? And he got like jaundice within 2 weeks. His skin started turning yellow. Trami says, I wouldn't want to work in a cobalt mine, but I like my 144 hertz screens. Exactly. Jackson says, if you have the time and money, being a healthy vegan does feel amazing, which may be why they are so fanatic about it. I'm sure if you could do it for real, if you could do it in a healthy way and actually, like you said, afford it. That's even to do even say go in the entirely in the other direction, like doing something like the carnivore diet or something. It's really expensive. It's really hard to do nothing but fucking eat meat in terms of cost, especially nowadays. Jesus Christ. Trauma says 2 RAM or necessarily environmentally friendly. That's also true. You're just you're picking one bad thing for another, if that's the way like people want to frame it, say, oh, like, factory farming and all the waste and the destruction that it causes. Well, that's also true on the other side of the equation,
They would murder. Are those actions automatic?
especially if you had to produce enough of what they think you should eat for the population, for the global population. How would that even be fucking possible? Gaming Dragon says, is that like the paleo diet? Yeah, essentially, yes. Prof says, how does being a vegan feel amazing when you have to suck grass all day?
Justified in
Well, if you can
society.
get supplements, I suppose. If you can afford those very expensive supplements and B12 shots and I don't know, maybe a drip.
Simply because our ancestors used to commit them. And besides, why would we ever base our morality on the actions of a primitive society when modern day notions of right and wrong didn't exist, and in the absence of choice, consuming animals was a necessity for their survival? Let's take that argument, because it's also pertinent when we look at the animals eat other animals excuse as well. Just because a lion kills and eats a gazelle doesn't mean we're justified to go to a supermarket and buy a steak. Lions are obligate carnivores, which means they need to eat meat to survive.
Not so fast there, my friend. Now, if we were to go to r/vegan and they getting into discussions about whether or not we should allow cat species to die out because they're obligate omnivores or carnivores rather, then they should. But then other people were like, no, there's vegan, ethically friendly cat food. We've moved beyond the paradigm. We've changed. Jackson says their approach is horrible and isn't effective. They always seem condescending. Yes, I would agree with that 100%. Hagbert says you just wrap your lips on that grass hole and go to town. Trami says he could have cut the entire argument down to they ate animals because they had to and leave out the emotional blackmail. Excellent way to put it. Ram says most people can only afford plant-based, and that's processed food with high sodium. Listen, I'm not going to disagree with the fact that like what is affordable in supermarkets, what's affordable in terms of like just going to restaurants, fast food, it's awful for you. And you have to kind of, if you're a smart, healthy person, which I try to be, I've been struggling lately since the holidays, I'll tell you. You gotta make smart choices, and you got to, be proportionate, and you have to take care of those things. You have to pay attention to that stuff, right? Just in the same way that if you're vegan, you got to pay attention to all that shit too, just in a different direction.
As we've already established, we don't. And like before, why would we ever base our morality on the actions of wild animals who are consistently documented as doing things that we would never deem acceptable within our own country or indeed within our own society in general? And so the argument continues even further. And so let's run with that idea of necessity and survival, because I'm pretty sure that if a vegan was stranded on a desert island, right, and the only thing they had to eat was an animal, they would definitely do it. And so the reality is, no one knows how they'll react in an extreme survival situation. That's really the point of the argument. To make vegans seem hypocritical if they say they might eat the animal if they absolutely had to survive. But there's been documented cases of humans cannibalizing to survive. There was a plane crash in the Andes, and the survivors...
Oh, excellent point. So people in desperate situations, the survival mechanism kicks in, and you do what you got to do. Wild stuff. Hagbert says we can't break down cell walls, but cell membranes are very easily absorbed by the human digestive system.
The plane crash lived because they cannibalized on the flesh of the dead passengers. And so cannibalism,
have you ever seen
in
Alive?
effect, became a justifiable act in that moment. Doesn't mean that cannibalism is a justifiable act in everyday society.
Trami says, kind of straw manning this entire talk. Yes, and this is his version of every argument against veganism. So he's knocking them all down. So this is supposed to be like a tool, an educational tool. If you're a vegan, you were put upon by your family out in the street. A wild carnivore human being comes and accosts you. You could use some of these arguments. And Trami says that, and I'm feeling generous saying that. Yeah, well, it's a whole lot of talking without a lot of substance. And this is the problem that you find with a lot of these people. And these are the top tier people. So when we watch that, like the vegan ethicist or whatever, or the vegan activist guy, what does it mean to be a vegan video? This is one of the guys that was in like the super cut of the people doing the good work. So this is somebody that he would point to you to and say, go listen to this guy. Listen to what he has to say. He does some man on the street stuff. Maybe we should look it up.
Society. Likewise, just because a vegan might consume an animal if they absolutely had to survive, doesn't mean that consuming animal products is a morally justifiable act in everyday society. And so then the argument progresses further. And we say yes.
Well, it's about time. Thank you.
Consuming animals is part of the food chain. I mean, it's the circle of life. Everyone who is born must one day die. That's a natural process. That's symbiotic and harmonious to nature and the world that we live in. Our food chains are incredibly important. They symbolize part of the natural order, and they help maintain and form ecosystems. Fundamentally, they're there to ensure that population sizes of animals are kept consistent and to ensure that the natural ecology is just well balanced. But what we do to animals when we selectively breed them, when we genetically modify them, when we artificially inseminate and forcibly impregnate them, when we take their babies away from them, when we mutilate them, when we exploit them for what they naturally produce for their own species, when we load them into trucks or trailers, take them to a slaughterhouse where we hang them upside down, cut their throat and bleed them to death, has nothing
to do with anything. Trami asked, is the interview with Nico for real, by the way? I clicked the shit out of that bell icon on that one. It's not just an interview. It is a debate with between Nico and Mr. Prophet himself, Butcher Pete. Ram says, people don't eat meat, but smoke cigarettes, vape, and drink beer and liquor don't understand. Prophet says, Hitler was a vegetarian. You agree with Hitler now, bro? Oh, yeah. It's one of the reasons why he wanted to eradicate the Jews. Was because of his vegetarianism and their practices of kosher meat. Trami says there is no ecological balance. It has no concept of balance. It just is or isn't. And then Prophet says, Nico is a Hitler appreciator. You heard it here. He's like Eric Dubé.
With a natural order. And most importantly, it fits none of the criteria required to be labeled as a food chain. You see, the food chain that we cite is a human construct created very conveniently to try and justify what is an entirely unnecessary act. It ignores the complexity and interdependent web of life that form our natural ecosystems. It is an appeal to nature fallacy that overlooks our ability to make moral decisions as beings who possess moral agency. In essence, the food chain argument draws upon the idea of might makes right.
It does not draw on the idea that might makes right. It's about cognition. Like, that's fucking crazy.
Belief that because you have the ability to physically exploit someone else, you're somehow justified to do so as well. And the circle of life, all that refers to is two moments of our existence that are certain, our birth and our death. Everyone who's born must one day come full circle and die. But what happens between those areas of certainty is variable and has nothing.
The burner says you should pull up a Vegan Gains video on YouTube. That guy's a piece of shit. I am familiar with Vegan Gains. That's actually a good one. Let's see if we can get. I've watched so many of his debates over the years, and he usually loses them. Like pretty substantial losses too. Like he's such a psychopath.
Nothing to do with a preordained circle of life. If we run with that argument, we'd be morally excused to harm anyone at any time in any manner that we so please. You'd be morally excused to murder an animal or indeed murder a human as well, running with that logic. And so let's move this on to a more practical note, because if the world went vegan, well, what would we do with all the animals? We can't just release billions of animals into the wild. That'd be devastating for the natural ecology. And of course it would. But what we have to understand is that animal agriculture runs on a system of supply and demand, meaning that when we buy a product, we demand that product be supplied. Now, farmers will only breed animals into existence that they can sell. They're not going to breed them if they can't sell them, because that's just not economically viable in the slightest.
Oh, no shit. You've cracked the code, Ed. Hagbard says, no, I wouldn't. Animals aren't people. Well, to them they are. That's what they try to create this. I heard the term was used, equity between humans and animals. And we all kind of exist as peers to a certain degree. Like they just completely anthropomorphize and humanize them, and they feel and think and experience the world in the same way that you and I do. Nico even went into getting like the fact that we like only have animal sanctuaries out in like out in the boonies, out in the sticks, as he said, that's like somehow inherently bigoted because it suggests that animal sanctuaries don't belong in urbanized areas. Therefore, livestock doesn't belong in urbanized areas. And you're like, that's just another example. You're like, who is this for? You're doing this for yourself, because that's a completely ridiculous thing to say. That's a ridiculous position to hold. That you think animal sanctuaries for like livestock, like chickens and cows, etc., should be urbanized. It should be in urban environments. Why? Do you think they would enjoy that? Can you peer into their soul? Can you read their minds? Trami says the kindergarten class in economics takes notes.
And so the
Write
shift
that
to
one
veganism
down.
will, of course, be very gradual. And so as the number of vegans increases, the number of animals being bred into existence will decrease proportionally. And of course it is an but if we ever get that vegan world will be a world where farmers are simply not breeding animals into existence anymore. And as such, we'll never be faced with the dilemma of having to either release billions of animals into the wild or take them to a slaughterhouse so we simply discard their bodies.
And this is all they're going to go to these arguments about. So they prefer them to never exist. Non-existence is preferable to existing. Sounds like the antinatalists. There's a lot of crossover between antinatalists and vegans, as I've coming to find out here. Hagbard says, I'm not allowed to keep livestock in my locale. I've looked. Actually, you can where I live, and I live in an urbanized zone, and my neighbor has chickens. She's got chickens. I get free eggs for mowing her lawn. It's a good grift. CC says, this bro be hipster Jesus. Prophet says, go buy eggs, you fucking cuck. The burner says, some cities, towns across the U.S. are lame like that. And then Hagbard says, fully. He's a fully urbanized individual. Ram says, man, animals are delicious. He can keep his grass. And then the burner laughs at hipster Jesus, CC.
But okay. All right. I see what you're doing. I see where you're going. But this is the problem. You see, vegans are hypocrites. Haven't you heard that small animals sometimes die in the production of crops, and therefore you can't even be 100% vegan? Now, it's true. Animals like caterpillars and worms do die in the production of crops, and we also can't guarantee.
How far down on the food chain are they? Do we not care about them? You know, there are people out there. There are movements of people out there that think plants need to be protected in the same way. I think they're like, what do you call it? The returners or something like that, where they think we need to return to nature.
The small mammals like mice and rats don't sometimes get killed as well. But the difference is that notion of intention and certainty. You see, when we buy an animal product, we're intentionally paying for someone to cause the suffering and death of an animal. That is a certainty. When we buy a plant product,
it's not a certainty. It depends on how you go about it. You could go get if you have local farmers and stuff, local butchers, mobile butchers, they do it pretty ethically, you know. Hagbard says rabbits, lots of rabbits. Yes, lots of rabbits die. CC says not just caterpillars and worms, bro. Small creatures and native animals rendered homeless. It completely fucks the ecology of a lot of places up. Is M. Night Shyamalan one of them? I don't know.
We're not. And so think about it this way. If
I
you're
don't know if
driving
he
down
is.
the road,
Is he one of them? Is M. Night Shyamalan one of the? Is he vegan? He might be. Jackson said red wine contains fish bladders. Vegans got to be careful out there. You never know when you're gonna eat a fish bladder. Ram says, I bet he will kill a fly.
and you accidentally run over a dog, morally, that is not the same as if you were driving down the road.
No, you know it is a certainty. Like he's saying, like, well, if you eat meat, that's a certainty that the way it's going to be delivered to you, that process is inherently evil, it's inherently violent. But there's no certainty that animals are going to die in the process of what I want, of what I would like to consume. No, it is. It's a fucking certainty, dude. There's not a question about it. But I guess they're far enough down on the evolutionary ladder, far enough down on the food chain that he doesn't have to give a fuck because he can't look into its eyes and feel bad. He can't project his own thoughts and feelings because they don't make the same kinds of noises. Trauma says, nah, it was the happening joke. I should have got that. I watched that not like a few months ago, actually. Prophet says, here's a kill shot I'm saving for Nico. You need blood for bone meal and bone meal for fertilizer. You can't even grow shit until I kill a motherfucker, rather. CC says we should just feed him and people of his ilk bugs and only bugs. Yeah, he's got to get on that Snowpiercer train.
Or a dog actively pursued them until you run them over. But the philosophy and ideology behind the argument that it's morally justifiable to buy animal products because sometimes small animals die in crop production adheres to the idea that, morally speaking, accidentally hitting the dog is the same as intentionally hitting.
It's not accidental if you know it's going to happen. If it's an inevitability, that's not an accident. That's just the cost of doing business. And he knows that. That's so disingenuous.
Dog. And so what about plants? Because plants are alive as well. So why don't we consider plants within our circle of moral compassion? And so plants are, of course, alive.
Because they're obligated. They're obligated. There's nothing you can do. I assume that's what he's going to say. It's like, how far are we going to take this? How far are we going to take this? Trami says, stop talking about morality. It's your weakest argument, goddammit. I agree.
Conscious. They don't have a brain, central nervous system, or pain receptors, but also more importantly, it can take up to 16 kilograms of plants to produce 1 kilogram of animal flesh, which means that vastly more plants are used in the production of a non-vegan diet than a vegan diet. So
sure. Hagbert says, put a fish head under each of my tomato plants every year, and I always have a good tomato yield. You sick fuck. Prophet says it's also not an account for farmers to murk deer, bear, and rabbits. These people have never been on farms. No, I don't think so. I don't think they actually have much like practical knowledge of how any of the shit works. The burner says, do you think that sweater fit before he converted to veganism 6 months before this TED Talk? I don't think so, buddy. Jackson says, isinglass is a form of gelatin derived from fish bladders. It's heavily used in production of red wine. I wasn't kidding. No, I knew you weren't kidding. I believed you. The burner says, why farms are death factories? More at 11. Ram says, this is the type of guy you listen to when you're half asleep. Or you have to go because it's a school thing.
If we care about plants, logically and morally, we're still obliged to be vegan. And this also ties in nicely with what we were just saying about animals being killed in crop production. Because if more crops are used in a non-vegan diet, that means if we care about small animals being killed in crop production, we are again, logically and morally obliged to still be vegan. But what about soy farming? Because soy farming is devastating for the environment, is it not? Soy farming is terrible for the environment. But that's only because 70 to 85% of all the soy that is grown is fed to livestock animals. In fact, it's predicted that as little as 6.
Yeah, but if it wasn't being fed to livestock animals, who do you think would be consuming it? So why would the amount be different? You have to make up for all the animals you're not murdering for food sources.
Percent could be used for human consumption. And that's not even about vegans eating tofu, because soya is ubiquitous amongst nearly everyone's diet. It's found in breads
Beta.
and cereals, sauces,
Beta.
chocolates, and so much more as well. So then we say, but do we have to be vegan? I mean, vegetarian? I get it. But animals don't die in the production of dairy and eggs, so surely being vegetarian is enough. Simply put, no, it's not. In the egg industry, male chicks are useless because they won't produce eggs. And they also won't grow to be the same size as the chickens that we kill for meat, which means that as soon as they are born, they're thrown into a giant macerator, minced up alive, or they're thrown into a gas chamber and gassed to death. All egg-laying hens as well will be sent to a slaughterhouse after around 72 weeks of life, when their bodies are fully depleted from being overly exploited and they're no longer profitable to the farmer. In the dairy industry, dairy cows will only produce milk to feed their children. They are mammals, just as we are. And so this means that farmers forcibly impregnate dairy cows year after year to ensure a continuous cycle and production of milk is there for him to sell or her to sell. When
Oh, thank you. I'm glad he corrected himself, him and her. Now, we don't want to be non-inclusive here. Butchers and murderers, they can be men and women just the same.
Cow gives birth, the baby will be taken away from the mother normally within 24 hours of birth. Male dairy cows are useless to the dairy industry. And so this means that approximately 95,000 male dairy calves are killed shortly after birth in this country alone, normally by being shot in the head. This is
the inhumanity. Hagbert says, what kind of doors do these gas chambers have? Asking for my cats.
Because they won't produce milk. And are sometimes not profitable enough to be sold on for beef. The female calves will be raised, and they too will join the herd, where they will be forcibly impregnated year after year, and all dairy cows are sent to the slaughterhouse as well. Which means that dairy and eggs are pretty much the same as meat. But
you're a piece of shit no matter what you do in this fucking world. Trauma says, I felt like he said that like, gasp, even women do this? F, gotta pay your respects. The burner says, no, F, what? Oh, did I get blocked? God damn it. BRB. No, is it really dead? Are you serious? Did I get flat? What the fuck? Oh, just let me know when I come back. Let me know when I come back. All right, hold on. Let's see here. Let's see here. All right, fuck. Let's see. Am I still alive? It says I'm still alive. Hold on. For policy violations? For policy violations? There we go. I'm back. All right, cool. Policy violations. Yeah, I guess I watched too much of this asshole. Fuck. Man. Brother can't catch a break. Can't catch a break in this goddamn world. All right, well, we'll move on from that one. Obviously, we're not going to be watching that one anymore. I guess it must have been because of the TEDx shit. Scared me too. You can't do shit on YouTube. I fucking hate YouTube. Cannot do shit. Like the notion that wouldn't be covered under fair use. I stop the fucking video every fucking 25 seconds because I need to hear myself talk. I mean, come on. Travis says he was being an arsehole anyways. He was. He's a prick. All right. Here's another one. Vegan activist leaves meat boss visibly shaken. So well, no, let's go. Fuck this guy. We're gonna look this asshole's I doubt it was him, but let's look up his man on the street stuff. Let's see. I want to see him interact with a real live human being.
I just want
Got a live TV debate: veganism a moral imperative? Question mark. Debate a vegan meat eating skeptic to vegan in 18 minutes. Okay, so he's going to fucking convince a meat eater to become vegan in 18 minutes. Seems pretty impressive. Gaming Dragon says we saved Christmas. Ram says I miss the old YouTube before they sold it to Google. So do I. YouTube used to kind of be awesome. Used to rock. Trump says this is going to be a vegan destroy his boss using facts and logic. We're going to get to that one next. I want to see this guy in the wild. And obviously this is on his channel. I'll show it to you. Okay, this is his channel. So I'm sure all of the stuff, this man on the street stuff, they're all positive. They got to be all positive. I doubt there's any where there's a question of if whether or not he's in the right. I doubt he would have the integrity to do that. He's not going to have anybody like steelman his positions. So we'll do this. Debate a vegan 18 minutes. Let's do it.
Every animal who we farm is eventually...
Oh my goodness. Sounds like Edgar Wright.
killed in a slaughterhouse. Does that constitute cruelty in your eyes or not?
That definitely constitutes cruelty. I'm going vegan.
Hi, Ideen.
Oh man, spoiler alert, Ed. Debate at UC Berkeley. Oh wow, he found somebody he could convince at UC Berkeley. Oh my goodness. Really out there in the lion's den. Definitely in the Coliseum.
My name's Ed. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. I have a banner and it says, "Why aren't you vegan yet?" So, why aren't you vegan yet?
I just enjoy trying a variety of food, and I feel like being vegan would take away a large variety and a lot of options.
That's true. If you go full vegan, it makes you kind of racist. A lot of different culinary traditions around the globe include meat. It's kind of bigoted. It's very privileged. It's very privileged and bigoted.
Options for me, yeah.
Does the enjoyment of a food justify what happens to produce the food?
Definitely not. I don't think the practices in America are definitely like out of pocket 100%. I'm not pro any of that.
We got a philosopher here, guys. We got a philosopher. Here, let me give you an easy one. Do you think that the way factory farming works is maybe a little suspect, maybe unnecessary in some ways? Well, yeah. Well, then why not be a vegan?
If the animals were taken care of.
Can you describe what that would be? Obviously, it's a not a particularly unique thing to be against factory farming. I think most people are, because it is objectively really horrible. But what about, like you said, good practices, or like maybe taken care of well? What would that look like?
I would say, like, if animals were raised with care. I mean, like, the factory farming is obviously terrible. So I would say if like animals were raised with care, they have the like right space to live and everything. They live out their lives, and then they get consumed one day. But that's just how, like.
Yeah. Oh my God. Jackson says, forget about eating at restaurants. Exactly. And then Tarami had said, I put it up, I didn't read it. This is hardly staged at all.
The world works, right? Not the world, but like the circle of life.
What does the circle of life mean? Because I guess the circle of life is really that, we're born and we die. That's the circle, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the circle of life and the fact that death is inevitable doesn't necessarily, I don't believe anyway, provide justification for us to take life arbitrarily or without a necessity. Mm-hmm. Did you agree with that?
The necessity is to feed human beings, right?
But does it have to be done with animal products? For you and I, because obviously the question is why aren't
That's true. I feel like it's like
here, let me talk to this kid who has no fucking idea about any of this stuff. And let's ask him some questions. Let's ask him some leading questions.
Opinion thing. I feel like for some people, like originally, like human beings were hunter-gatherers, right? They survived off of consuming other animals. So in that sense, I feel like it is justified if we were to have good.
Trami wants to know. Wait. Was this video before or after the TEDx? I'm assuming this is after. The TEDx, I think, is from a few years ago. Yeah, because it would have been. They're in an auditorium full of people. Nobody was wearing masks. If you were at Bath University in current year, you'd probably be masked up. Hagrid says, I like that he keeps quoting The Lion King. Burner says, dude, never watched The Lion King. Tarami says, the usage of Circle of Life is highly suspect.
Good practices and go about it the proper way.
So obviously with hunter-gatherers, that was a huge part of our history.
Yeah.
And that was important because eating the animals at that time allowed us to survive and allowed us to continue until we are where we are today. But it was a necessity back then. And this is the thing about wild animals. Other animals do hunt and eat other animals, but they do so because they have to. You know, a lion eats a gazelle because, well, they have to, but also they don't have the moral agency that we have. They don't have the ability to be able to rationalize the impact of their choices. We shouldn't hold ourselves to the same standard.
Oh, really? Really? They can't. Oh, they're not as high. Their cognitive ability is not the same as a human being. Interesting.
As wild animals. Is that something you would agree with or disagree with?
I would agree with that. But at the same time, human beings are more intelligent for a reason, right? This is how it works. Like, more intelligent species consume other lower intelligent species. Like, that works within animals, it works within us. We're just another form of animals.
Sure. But is that not equal might makes right? Because we can, therefore we are allowed to. Do you think that's true?
I feel like that's getting into a little bit of like political thinking. Right?
Well, I guess because you're saying...
He's like, are you trying to get me to join a cult? Hagrid says, cooked animal protein is likely a key factor for the size of the human brain. Yes, 1,000%. Ram says, do you think that guy cares about to eat a cow once he gets up? I think I know what you mean. Tarami says, now that I've led you on with the correct answers to this question, what do you think?
Saying that the reason it's okay for us to harm other animals and then consume them is because we are intellectually more dominant and because we are physically more dominant. But that subscribes to the idea that...
Oh, I got you, Ram. Yeah, is he going to be convinced after this? Probably not. Probably not. I mean, he's on camera. He's a cool guy. He's hip. He's at UC Berkeley. He's talking to this guy on his program, you know?
Might makes right. The idea that because we can do something, we're therefore justified to. But do you think that... so that's one question. Does might make right? But also, does intelligence define worth of life? Or not define worth of life, but should someone be allowed to be harmed by someone else simply because the person harming them is more intelligent than they are?
Man, you're right, bro.
All right.
No, that's true. I agree with that. I don't know. Honestly, the only reason I still eat meat is because it tastes good. And I'm not against, like, veganism. I am totally supporting. I don't even consume red meat anymore. It's just like poultry and that kind of stuff. Even I know, like, the factory farming is like it's just shit show.
Yeah. Why don't you consume red meat if you don't mind me asking?
It's like carcinogenic. It's like I heard it's bad for you. Yeah.
Is it bad for the animals as well? The animals who were killed for it? It's a bit of a strange question.
Yeah. I mean,
he's like, now that I think about it, I guess it is bad for them because they're dead. They died. Oh, man.
They died.
So we talked about earlier. We talked about giving animals a good life.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to come back to that because with factory farming, we agree it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what we acknowledge, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do we acknowledge that reducing animal suffering is preferable?
Oh, definitely. I feel like most people would agree with that statement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Me too. And most people do seem to, which is obviously good because the opposite would be kind of terrifying if people are like, no, we shouldn't.
Jackson says, this is sad. This kid has no knowledge of the counter arguments. No, he doesn't. And that's the purpose of doing something like this. This is essentially propaganda. I guess you could make the same argument about like Steven Crowder when he does those like change my mind videos. You could suggest it's a very similar thing because you're talking about unformed minds, people that have not come to any real conclusions. They don't really have a ton of life experience yet. And you kind of ask them, you kind of bait them into these questions. Although here, this guy's pretty just amenable. He's probably like, yeah, I guess so, dude. Trami says, yeah, he sets himself up some real tough ideological opposition here. Yeah, we'll have to watch him debate the guy on the news after this. The burner says, I haven't been this blown away since I read the Cliff Notes for The Catcher in the Rye.
We shouldn't try to reduce suffering. Anyway, so we agree that factory farming is wrong, and we agree it's wrong because of the practices which cause suffering, the confinement, the mutilations and such. So that's bad. So then you and I are at the same point, and then we start coming down this road together, agreeing with each other, and then there's
See, we agree up to this point. Like, don't you want to just do what I do? Hagbard says Ben Shapiro owns the omnivores, destroys them, in fact.
point where you stop and I keep going.
Facts and
And
logic.
you stop at the good practices bit, and I keep going to the no farming of animals at all bit, the veganism bit. So the reason why I don't stop here is for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because if an animal's living a good life, at what point do we then say that they've had enough of a good life? Because we're saying, this is fine because the animals are happy, but at a certain point we have to say enough happiness for you. You can't be any more happy. You've had your fill of happiness. When do we make that decision?
Aren't you making that decision for people around the globe with veganism? Aren't you saying this thing that you derive pleasure from, this thing that brings you health, happiness, hearth, well, you just can't do it. Oh, look at this. Got the painted nails. This kid's edgy. This kid's progressive. This kid's part of the tribe.
But I could also counter that question with how do you know if the animals are being happy? The animals don't really have a lot of intelligence.
Is that dog over there happy?
I'm sure we don't eat dogs, man. Come on.
Yeah.
It's a bit different. With chickens, they have a lifespan. I don't know how long their lifespan is, but it's not as long as humans, right?
The burner says beta. Trami says, now let's talk about abortion and at what stage. Yeah, how about how we have a complicated ethical discussion?
No. So does it have to be for them to deserve moral consideration? Does it have to be a long life?
No.
Actually, that was something I thought of, Trami, about on Friday the debate. Well, I'm not part of the debate. I'll just be there dealing with the chat and moderating, or one of the moderators. I was I wonder how they feel about abortion. Would you, if you asked one of these hardcore vegan activists, these kind of absolutists, what they thought about abortion? Are they pro-choice or pro-life? What would they say? And what would be the? I have a feeling they would have to go pro-choice because that's just part of the wing they belong to. But how do they rationalize and justify it? It'd be interesting. So put that in your cap, Prophet. Ram says this guy needs a knuckle sandwich running his lips too much.
But I feel also they can't express their happiness and they can't express their contentment, and it's a bit different, right? They don't have feelings the same way we do.
How do you know that?
I don't.
Well, how does he know to the contrary of that? Hagbard says this guy needs to live where there are feral pigs, in javelina populations. Oh, and he has to grow his own vegetables. Well, I'd be asking quite a lot. Urbanized zones, don't you know? It's very tough. It's very tough out there.
Don't know that specifically, but
we can look at his behavioral aspects and attributes. For the dog, the dog's a very convenient example for me because the dog's right there, right? So and that dog's been the dog is beautiful and having a lovely time. All those scratches. So it's a convenient example, but it does illustrate the point, which is that non-human animals, are different to us. But there are certain behavioral things, such as the way they vocalize things.
Do you think that all animals are the same? And the levels of evolution? What does domestication do? These are tough questions. These are tough questions for somebody like Ed.
Things, the way that they act, we can see pain and suffering in the way that animals act, but you can also see contentment.
I want to see the other people he talked to. He probably sat here for 6 hours. Somebody must have come up and destroyed him. You got to get fucking the Shap in there. You got to get Ben Shapiro in there. Jackson says dogs need to eat meat. What does that say about them? Well, they don't have as high of a cognitive abilities. They don't have the ability to moralize and rationalize in the same way humans do. Conveniently now they can't. Now we got to get into the nuance of it, because if you just don't accept my what I presuppose, then well, I guess I have to say that. But they don't want to say that. They don't, because they don't want you to think about it that way. They want you to personalize it. They want you to feel as if it is happening to you. And Hagbard says, someone made this guy eat a hero at some point this day. Travis says, my problem is that they're making this hard line as if we can't make judgment calls on these things, but we can and do make difficult calls all the time. Yeah, it's too black and white. It's incredibly black and white. Because there's tons of things you can find parody on in terms of the way that we like maybe produce meat. Like I said, I'll be the first to admit, lots of problems with factory farming, lots of problems with the food that is available to the average person on a regular basis in terms of its quality, in terms of like how healthy it is. And a lot of people are just kind of like costed out of being able to afford good stuff, you know? The burner said vegan gains don't feed his dog meat. 4-minute video. Oh, we'll watch it. Okay. All right. I'll definitely watch that. I'll look it up now.
And pleasure as well. So we may not recognize it in the same way that we do because they are different to us, but they have the basic components that create emotion, a brain and nervous system, all of these things that we have and the things that create emotion within us, they also possess. We're kind of saying that it's okay to do these things to animals because we don't have the ability to empathize with them as easily as we do with humans.
I think that's true.
But does that mean that we're justified in harming them? I mean, we recognize they feel pain. We recognize that they can suffer.
Yeah. I don't think you got me in a tight spot here, because
I can't say that I'm okay that animals die. I can't say that because that would make me a bad person. Jackson says less meat consumption would be better, but these guys turn people off completely. Well, yeah, especially considering the quality of meat that we're generally served up on a regular basis, right? I mean, you can make an argument for that in terms of like, but you got to figure out what is the balanced diet. You know, what does a person actually need? You know, there's lots to be said about like over consumption, consumerism, all that kind of stuff, how these things are sold to us. Tons of things you could talk about, tons of things that you could like actually probably agree with, right? There's things to agree with. There's a Venn diagram out there where we agree. The carnivore, the omnivore might agree with some of their points, but they're such pricks. Ram says, I'm in New York City. 1 tomato is $4. Just one. Yeah, that's insane. That's fucking crazy.
Not for animal cruelty in any way, right? But I am. Maybe. Hold up.
What about a slaughterhouse? You say you're not for animal cruelty, but to eat meat, an animal has to go into a slaughterhouse. Mm-hmm. And even with dairy and eggs, of course, they're not physically killed for dairy and eggs, but they do also end up in a slaughterhouse because at a certain point their production declines. So it's not profitable to keep them alive, and then they can be sold for meat. So every animal who we farm is eventually killed in a slaughterhouse. Does that constitute cruelty in your eyes or not?
Every animal we farm ends up in a slaughterhouse. That's not true. And we'll find out more about that on Friday, 9 p.m., right here on ZooBox.
That definitely constitutes cruelty. I'm going vegan.
So here we were at the top. We disagree with factory farming.
Yeah.
We come along, and you stopped here.
Yeah.
And you stopped here because you felt the animals were given a good life. And even if that is true, they still have to go to a slaughterhouse at a certain point. So then we have to come down a bit further. So if we think that the reduction of animal suffering is morally preferable, then the best way to reduce animal suffering to its fullest extent is to not exploit them in any capacity. It's to not take them to any slaughterhouse or take their life in any way needlessly, which is why veganism becomes the morally preferable choice, because it's the fullest reduction of suffering that we can achieve for the animals who we farm. What do you think about that?
No, that's true. No, that's definitely true. I feel like taking away slaughterhouses and everything is definitely the most moral thing we could do for animals. But also that takes away a huge source of food for the human race. It's like we're not just taking away meat, we're taking away dairy, eggs, anything that's produced by an animal, which also like has like clothes and everything.
Yeah.
So at least he's thinking a little bit more deeply about this. Like if you eradicated these things, like a lot of the things we enjoy in society would go the way of the dodo. Like it wouldn't be as abundant, I suppose. Hagbard says, what about the cow that Billy Crystal adopts in City Slickers? Checkmate. If Billy can do it, why can't you? Travis says, and the preferable option is that we do not exist at all. Oh shit. The antinatalists have a point. Call up Diane. Old Diane You put a feather in your cap.
That's right.
That's like a. I mean, you're really well versed in this.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're really well spoken, honestly.
I appreciate that. That's very kind. You said about.
You're like, yeah, it's right on.
Well, I appreciate that. You said about the food thing, and you said it takes away a large amount of food.
Yeah.
And I would counter that. And say that actually the production of animal products takes away a lot of food. That sounds strange, but the animals who we farm are fed something. And for the majority of them, because they're factory farmed, that means they're fed grains and they're fed soy and corn and stuff like that. And it's not to say that we want to eat what animals eat. We don't want to eat their diets. That wouldn't be so good. But the land that is currently used to produce feed for them is huge. So in the US, for example, just...
Yes, that's true. Jackson says slaughterhouse employees' working conditions should be improved. This is a more important cause. I would agree with you. You got to have a hierarchy of priorities, right? You got to think what what is something we can actually maybe affect the change of. This is so pie in the sky. It's hard to even kind of conceptualize the world that they want to live in, and I don't think they define it very well. They don't define what does it look like on the other side, other than that we don't eat animals. What does it look like? Trami says, oh, thank you. I know I'm great. Oh, God, what a twat. And Hagrid says to Jackson, look at Upton Sinclair here in the chat. Jackson been to the jungle.
Just under half of all the landmass of the contiguous US states, so that's all the states except for Alaska and Hawaii, is used to produce animal food. Only 4% of the entire landmass of the US is used to produce food directly for human consumption. So we have this huge problem where 20% of land in the US is used to produce just beef, 20%, and yet it only provides us 3% of our calories. Now, if we repurpose land, we could produce so much more food. And I'm going to give you one more stat. I don't want to be too...
We could repurpose land and have more meat so it would be cheaper. We could do that too.
Science heavy with it because it's a bit tedious, but a piece of research was done that said that if we took all of the land that's currently used to grow food for animals, so just the feed for animals, we could grow enough food to feed another 350 million people. So actually, whilst we may think that we're removing food,
it's like vegan math. Vegan math. Trust me, just trust me.
Actually creating the opportunity to produce more food than we currently do.
That's crazy.
So it's crazy. And it's just another symptom of this broken system that we currently exist in when it comes to agriculture.
Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with just the way people are raised and the culture that people were brought up with. Eating animals has been around for probably as long as humans have been around.
Well, yeah, more or less.
Yeah,
we
more
could
or less.
say.
But yeah, it's gonna be hard to. You can convince me, but it's gonna be hard to convince 7 billion people. Or not, I don't know how many vegans there are minus that, but
yeah,
not very many. Hey, what's up, Wasteoid? Wasteoid Radio says, leave the city, befriend your local farmer, then chug raw milk till your heart's content. It's good advice. Get the fuck out of those cities, man. Be more local. There is something to be said about that, right? You could definitely be more local. Travis says 350 million. That's nothing. It isn't. It's not very much at all. It really, if you think about in the larger scheme of things. Hagrid says, where does this fella stand on fossil fuel production? I wonder. Well, he doesn't like to talk about that, because how else would he get his vegan gains, if you will? Ram says he's about to get up and go get him a juicy chicken sandwich. About to go to add insult to injury. He's going to go to Chick-fil-A. The juiciest fast food place on planet Earth.
Not as many as we need, that's for sure. But the point is, the reason I'm here today is to convince people like yourself and to have conversations with people, because I believe that we have a lot of power, more than we realize. Now, obviously, agriculture is propped up by government subsidies, by legislation and such, which makes it hard for us to think that we can combat it through our consumer choices. But it is a consumer-driven industry, supply and demand and all these different aspects. And so we actually have a lot of power every single day.
Studying that stuff.
Yeah, right. It's true, right? Consumer choice. And ultimately,
personal choice, guys. Personal choice.
We have to decide every single day is, do we want to contribute to a system that increases suffering or reduces suffering? And that's the choice that we have. What would your answer to that be? Reduce or increase?
I would like to reduce suffering for everyone.
And how can we do that when it comes to food?
By how do you measure that? How do you measure that? What's the trade-off? You don't guess. It's just not that simple. It's not this or that. And it's disingenuous to even frame it in this context like that. It's kind of ridiculous. CC says, this reeks of entitlement and narcissism. It always comes down to the power for these people. Oh, I agree with you. 100%. It's entitlement. They have no idea what it feels like to be the median human being on the planet Earth. Whether you're in Western societies or not, especially if you're not, right? If you're not privileged or lucky enough to be born in a westernized country, they have no thought to that at all. Trami says, oh, I love suffering.
Go vegan.
So will you?
Yes, maybe slowly.
Slowly. Okay. And
I think it'll be a process. I think it's gonna be hard to go cold turkey.
So let me make it simple.
So he's got to get that chicken sandwich in. He's like, one more taste. That's the best thing about changing a lifestyle, like a diet or whatever. You're always like, hey, there's always tomorrow, dude. I got to eat my peanut butter and crackers tonight. It's 2 a.m. But tomorrow, I'm getting into it. CC says, all the things he says come down to everyone else has the wrong idea and not living the quote-unquote right way. Hagbard says, the vegan kind of looks like like a Borzoi dog. Guys, Ram says, guys, just work out, eat healthy, and you'll be fine. I agree with you. It's all about moderation. Like, you have to have personal responsibility, which is a problem in a lot of places, right? People just, there's an addictive quality to the preservatives and stuff like that, and the sugars and the process that happens in a lot of Western countries, for sure. Jackson said the food system in America is pretty corrupt. It should be improved, but this isn't the way. I would agree with you 100%. Travis says, like Dr. Cox says, the last cigarette is the best one. Trust me, I know. I've had a million of them. Oh, I used to be the same way. I used to quit smoking. I quit smoking every day. And then in the morning, I start right back up.
For you. The prospect of going vegan is daunting because we take our current position in life and we say, I've got to change all of this, and then for the rest of my life I'm going to be living this specific way. That's psychologically terrifying. So what we have to do is simplify it right down. And the way to do that is think of foods that you currently enjoy eating. It could be pastas, curries, stir fries, tacos, nachos, burritos, burgers, pies. It could be anything.
What if you just made those things with vegetables? What if you could have all of the same things, except it's 3 times as expensive and it's made from plants?
If you enjoy eating, there's a lot of delicious foods there. And you just have to take out the non-vegan components and replace them with something vegan. So for me, spaghetti bolognese used to be one of my favorite foods. Still is, because I just take out the beef mince and replace it with soy mince or lentils or something else instead. So we're not reinventing the wheel, we're just merely changing little components of it. And that's a way to simplify it down. And then you do it day by day, meal by meal. Instead of going, from this moment on, I'm going to be vegan for the rest of my life, you say, my next meal is going to be a vegan meal. My next meal after that's going to be a vegan meal, and then you do it meal by meal by meal by meal, and eventually you no longer want to eat animal products, but you haven't got there.
And before you know it, you believe in Xenu. How's your thetan level doing?
By giving yourself this huge ultimatum. You've got there by just taking it day by day by day until eventually you reach the point where you go, well, why would I want to kill an animal when I don't have to? So just simplify it down, do it day.
The burner brings up a good point. This dude wanted out of the convo back when he said he'll go vegan. Yeah, he thought that was his out. He thought like, oh, I can be done now. I'm actually kind of hungry now that we've been talking, right? Jackson says, forget about family dinners and you will have to bring all your own food everywhere you go. This is very true. There's an alienating aspect to this as well. An alienating one. There's actually, I was listening to this guy, James Lindsay. He was on Joe Rogan and he used it as an example for something else, but it was very apt about the idea of like you have like a vegan person in your house and you're trying to accommodate that vegan person. Suddenly, like everybody in the house, every meal you have suddenly has to become vegan. All you're doing is trying to placate the emotional state of one person and how that can kind of spread out and bleed out, and sometimes in unhealthy ways and in unfair ways. The burner says, like Christ, smart British guy, let me go. Ram says, vegetarian people are funny. They don't eat meat, but eat eggs, drink milk, and eat cheese. CC says, I wonder if his stance on culture of excess and luxury being hawked every day, he talks to people like children. Let's make this real simple. Sorry, but it's not simple. You won't change that by reframing. 1000% agree. There's always a sense of, it's almost like elitist. It's very condescending. It's very like, oh, you're too stupid to understand. You don't know the depths of your own activities. Jack says, yep, it's brutal. And then Trami2cc says, I'm pretty sure he doesn't view buying a new phone every year as an issue. Exactly. The pain that's caused, the global suffering that is caused by engaging in most, especially electronic consumer products. Are you fucking kidding me?
By day, meal by meal, and just replace the components of your favorite dishes with vegan stuff instead. And I think that's the way to go.
Definitely.
What do you think about that?
That's a great way to do it. Yeah, actually, I didn't even think about that.
Like, they just don't care at all about the human race, period. They just don't give a fuck. They don't care about the conditions of factories. They don't care about the genocides that go on in the world. They don't care about the things that go on in Saudi Arabia. He brings those things up just to draw a cheap, cynical parallel. Because he's like, well, you understand why you should feel bad about that. Well, you should feel the same way about what I'm talking about. I mean, even in that TED Talk, he was just like, people used to rape. People used to rape. So, that was socially acceptable at one time too. It kind of makes you think, don't it? Makes you think. Trami says to CC, oh my gosh, chat's moving. Trami says to CC, I'm pretty sure he doesn't view buying new phones. Oh, I read that already. And then CC answers, probably spends more on his hair products than I do. Ram says, I feel like what you eat should be your own business. Nobody should care.
Is your cameraman vegan?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, right on, bro.
You wouldn't be hired if he wasn't.
I know, I was going to say.
It's like, I only hire and care about vegans. It's pretty non-inclusive, honestly. Wouldn't you want to hire people that weren't vegan? Wouldn't you want to hire them so that they're around you, so they can be influenced you? He makes the argument, one person can make a change. Just one person. That's another notch in the vegan belt, right? So wouldn't you want to do everything you can? If you were a consummate activist, you'd have all fucking meat eaters. All meat eaters. You wouldn't take no liberation pledge. You wouldn't tell people that you won't eat with them if they eat meat, if they eat meat products. You wouldn't say that to them because you want every opportunity to influence them. But I guess they're kind of short-sighted. Jackson says, Prophet should bring up the technological consumer goods issue. Oh, he probably will, honestly. Trami says, we confuse streamer. Well done, us. CC says, Trami, I agree 1,000%. 1,000. You guys got it.
But we weren't born vegan. And this is an important point, and maybe we'll end at this. We weren't born vegan, but we had to ask ourselves a series of questions. And one of them is related to what you said at the beginning, that we enjoy how these foods taste. And one of the questions I asked myself is, what has higher value, taste or life? So let me ask you that question. What has higher value?
What has higher value, taste or life? I don't know. In some sense, can you actually separate the two?
Our taste buds or the life of an animal?
Well, that's like a hard question to answer, like you're asking me to choose whether a life or something that's temporary, like a taste bud. One way to look at it is like
the way he disingenuously frames it, it's actually not hard. Because you would say, oh, well, my momentary sense of taste is obviously not as important as a living creature. That's what he wanted you to say. And that's probably what you will say. Ram says, I'm going to make him some ground beef and tell him it's my secret plant-based recipe. That's happened. I've seen people do that. Trami says, I have to wonder what he says to people who just go, I don't care that animals suffer. I like burgers. He would probably be just, fuck you. Get very indignant. Shut off the camera. Pack it up, boys. Jackson says, the taste of real bacon cannot be replicated. This is very true. I've had fake bacon. It is not the same. Even turkey bacon is not the same as pork bacon. Come on. Hagbert says, a life worth living has tasty things. And then Trami says, because this cruelty angle seems like the only thing he's got. Yeah, it's just this constant appeal to your emotions. None of this has like any practical application. There's nothing pragmatic about what they say. So it's just about like how you feel about it. How do you feel about the things that you do? And isn't that the most important thing? It's how you feel.
We're only alive for what, like 80 to 100 years, right? And the Earth's been around for much longer than that. Oh, yeah. So why would you limit yourself to a certain amount of flavors when there's like exponential amount of flavors to try?
Because someone has to suffer and have their life taken from them for some of the flavors we're talking about.
It's not someone.
Are animals not someone's?
No, I feel like
No, they're not. Good for you, Ginger Kid. Good for you. Please push back. Please, for the love of fucking God.
What are
they're animals.
But you by yourself said earlier that we're animals as well.
We are, but now we're back to that whole thing.
Well,
now we're back to some stupid semantic debate you want to have to me about like how do we categorize things and where we place our value. Like that's just fucking autistic. It's so stupid.
An animal isn't a someone. What are they? A something?
Animals are not things. They're not property. They're not just empty vessels. They have an eternal life. I wish I could play. I cannot play it on here, but I would love to play Joaquin Phoenix's acceptance speech when he won the Oscar for Joker. Didn't he get up there? He was talking about factory farming. He was talking about being vegan. And actually, when he got nominated for the Golden Globes, he insisted that they have a vegan like spread for the food that they had. He wanted it to be all vegan. So maybe they knew he was going to win. But he gives this like stupid speech where he's like, you steal her milk? How could you do this? How could you do this? Trami says, save a cow, be like Saturn, eat your offspring. Ram says that guy went to McDonald's after this interview, sit down in his door with this, laugh out loud with this.
You refer to animals as someone? Okay.
Why don't you? Or why wouldn't you?
I would love it if he just stood up, kicked the chair, and said, freak.
I don't know. I just never have.
Yeah, it's strange, right?
Yeah.
But this is another thing. The way we talk about animals and the language we use is constantly degrading them. So when we say something, or we call them an it, because it's devaluing their life and their individuality. If we acknowledge that all the animals we farm are someone's who are individuals having their own subjective experiences, it becomes very hard to justify slitting their throats for a meal that lasts 15 minutes when you recognize they're an individual whose entire existence, think about this, their entire existence has been taken from them for 15 minutes of sensory pleasure on our end. That is potentially the most...
It's kind of rocks. I'm just joking. Jackson says the dog issue is definitely complex, with pigs being so much smarter than dogs. Well, it's a question of domestication and its perspective and the relative nature of a being's existence. Honestly, to be kind of just cold about it. That's kind of how it is. Ram says he sounds goofy like a clown. Honk honk.
Most arbitrary things that we could possibly use to justify taking someone's entire life from them. You know, the process of what they're forced to endure, and then having their throat cut for something that we eat and then forget about almost instantly.
Yeah.
And that's why these flavors aren't more important, because we're talking about someone's existence, and that is a someone because they're an individual, a sentient, conscious being with feelings who obviously is very different to us, but in the same way that our life is valuable to us, their life is valuable to them. They fight for their lives. You know, they don't willfully walk into a slaughterhouse. They struggle and fight.
Yeah, they have the survival mechanism like all living beings have. People are not lemmings waiting for you to dig a hole so they don't walk off a cliff. I don't know.
To get out. They're fearful and scared, and we force them into these environments that we can put them between two slices of bread and call it a sandwich. I don't know. I'm getting emotional, but I think that's a travesty. I really do.
You think this guy cries every time he fucking drives by a Subway? Trami says he's right. I'm quitting sex. It's just 15 minutes of pleasure, then it's nothing.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, you got me, bro. No, that's true.
Well, that's like, Tarami is like making a joke, but there are really hardcore feminists that suggest that any sexual congress is actually a form of rape of a woman, just by its very nature. It's rape. So those ideas are out there. Because they're like, what, just to have 15 minutes of sensory pleasure? You're going to rape a woman? Ram Ram says, run them lips, buddy. You're going to win the clown award.
I can't even argue with that.
Yeah, I know.
No, you can't. It's hard to
No,
argue.
I know. You can't argue with my fucking facts and logic. I'm sorry. I know you can't, buddy. It's cool. It's okay.
I don't want to get emotional, but I just think that it's such a severe thing that we do, and it's for something that's so irrelevant in the grand scheme of what we can achieve as humans. We want a better world, a world without suffering. Well, one of the best ways we can reduce suffering is by changing what's on our plates, and that can be a good stepping stone to addressing other issues as well, of course. It doesn't end there,
Definitely.
but it's a great way to start.
Definitely.
All right.
Yeah, I think so too.
Cool. All right.
I like his spaced out look. Look at this. Look how he's just completely checked out of the conversation. Like Jackson, or like Ram Ram said, I think. Was it Ram Ram who said it? He just wants to be out. He wants to be gone.
As well, of course. It doesn't end there,
Definitely.
but it's a great way to start.
Definitely.
All right.
Yeah, I think so too.
Cool. All right.
Holy shit.
Oh, shit.
Bro, that was great.
Thank you, my friends.
Very
Thank
well
you.
versed.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Very well versed, man. I really learned something. Random stranger who I cannot verify anything he said and didn't qualify a single thing. Travis says, I will refer to the Jack Murphy Law, Clause 2015 to 1.
Shut up. Well, thank you. It's very kind.
You're the man.
He is the man. If you're interested over there, are they still there? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have flyers. We have a campaign against Tyson too.
And they're a vegan organization, so they can help you.
Tyson too.
Okay, but actually, just a brief thing to mention.
Hey, Ram Ram, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate the compliment. And, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And because we're around.
Okay, you say you're against factory farming. This is the last point.
Yeah,
but what you have to recognize is that.
So he just tried to get out of the debate, and he's just going, no, one more thing. Why I got you spaced out.
But 99.9% of the animal products in this country come from factory farms. So when we buy these products, that's according to the USDA. When we buy these products, we're directly supporting an industry that we know to be terrible. Damn. So it's just something to think about as well.
99.9%.
According to the USDA, yeah. It's a huge number.
That's crazy. Is it like that worldwide?
More or less. Well, in developed nations. And in nations that are developing, who are becoming more economically sufficient, and their agriculture is getting that case there. Yeah. The number of animals that we're killing is increasing, not decreasing, unfortunately. But hopefully we can curb that.
Are the number of animals produced increasing as well?
We're at 80 billion land animals, and we kill somewhere between 0.8 and 2.3 trillion marine animals. Yeah, that's fish. So it's a staggering number. Shocking.
I didn't even think about fish. Oh my god.
I know.
He's like, you got to watch this documentary called The Seaspiracy. Trauma says, I think you've unconverted this kid. You got to play your hand right. You got to time things. You can't just hang out forever. He had him, then he lost him. Then he got him back, then he lost him. The kid was completely spaced the fuck out. Gaming Dragon says, I love when Brits come to America and tell us how to live.
Yeah, they count as well.
Look how fucking satisfied he is. Look at the self-satisfaction. It's like this is the smuggest smile we've seen today.
I apologize for all meat eaters and all non-vegans.
I apologize for all meat eaters and all non-vegans. Well, you keep that, buddy. You fucking asshole. Fucking weirdo. Burner says, we condone that practice since American Idol.
We got that. I have the same ones. So that's cool.
My man.
All right, take it easy.
Let me get you guys on socials.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Okay. Just because the Burner actually brought it up, we're gonna watch this short vegan gains video, and then we're gonna come back for one more Earthling Ed Winters video where he does a live TV debate against somebody. Is veganism a moral imperative? But before we get to do that, we're gonna watch this vegan gains video. Vegan gains is pretty well known around the internet. He is the resident vegan weirdo. He used to do a lot of debates. He used to be like way more prevalent because there was a period, I don't know if people are familiar with it, they called it blood sports. Everybody was debating everybody and just yelling and screaming, and he was one of those people. At least that's how I came across him. Jackson says the ocean is pretty destroyed. To be fair, for sure, there's always better ways to do things, right? We don't have to just accept that the way it's done now has to be forever in terms of how we get these things. But at the same time, they're not really providing practical solutions to these problems at all. So those things will continue. They'll continue because if you can't just fuck it. It's like clean energy. You can't just take something away without providing something equivalent. People will not accept a change in their lifestyle, fair or unfair, good or bad. Hagbert says, "Filthy carnus." And then Tarami says, "Jerry Springer." Well, it's kind of like Jerry Springer. Jackson says, "Bloodsport is epic." JCVD. Oh, that's a great flick. Yeah, I love Bloodsport.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, hi everybody. Well, he looks like he's gained some weight. When is this video from? Jesus Christ. He used to be pretty tight. This is from January 3rd, 2022. So this is from recently. 19 days ago. Hi. Hi everybody. Hi. It's me. It's me, Vegan Gains. I'm here with my vegan dog.
Hi, everyone. So today I wanted to talk about how I feed my pets vegan. A lot of people have told me that, all my animals
He's
are...
like, "Welcome to my hovel." Look how, okay, hold on. I just want to be transparent. I'm not one to talk at the moment. Okay? I got a little hovel here myself. But Jesus Christ, he's got a weight bench. He's got a cat tree situation, a cat house here. All this shit stacked up against the wall. He threw some cool bisexual lighting in the background. Maybe to divert your attention away from the pee pads. That house cannot smell good. It doesn't smell good. It doesn't. It doesn't. The burner says facts. And Forrest Yule says voice doesn't fit the build. Well, when you're vegan, this is just part of the thing. Your balls shrink, your voice goes up.
are going to die, like my cats and dogs, if I feed them a vegan diet. Well, as you can see, they're not dead yet. This is Finn. So he is turning 5 years old next month. We've had him for almost 5 years.
We're hoping to get him to 7 years. He's a little, he's a little sickly.
We got him when he was a little puppy, just a few months old. And for that entire time, he has been on a vegan diet. And as you can see, he's very healthy. Wow, look how healthy this dog is. So he's not dead yet. And this is our big dog, Mai. She was, I think, about 5 months old when we adopted her. She's 8 months now.
Adoption is key. Adoption is key. Forrest Yule laughs. Jackson says this is dangerous and will limit the lifespan of a dog. I've researched it heavily. I will take your word for it. I believe that because you can't do everything with supplements. You can't. It's just not possible. This gaming dragon says that dog don't look like he's on a diet. Hagbert says your animal's kidneys are going to shut down. And then Trami says, "Can we discuss the immense discomfort these bred dogs go through during their lives? Please, please think of the dogs. Think of these dogs. Why aren't they allowed to just be out free in the wild in urban environments? Like third world countries." Oh, what the hell was that movie? There's a movie about wild dogs. Something of God. It's a good movie.
So we've had her for 3 months, and she's been on a vegan diet. She's grown a shit ton ever since we got her. And as you can see, not dead yet, even though she's a big dog. She's a very big, active dog, plays all day, and it's amazing. Even though she's on a vegan diet, She is not dead, as you can see. She is quite healthy. Those are some good ears.
This is like a hostage video. It's like a proof of life video. He's like, yeah, you guys said that I couldn't keep these dogs alive. Well, look at them. They're still alive. Donate to my Patreon.
Wow. And this one really triggers people. So this is my cat Prismo. As you can see, he is a very lovely, sweet kitty. So we adopted him when he was only a few weeks old. His mother died. He was a stray cat. And we have had him for over a year now. So he's about a year and 3-4 months old. So almost a year and a half. And he has been on a vegan diet the entire time we've had him for over a year. And as you can see, he is not dead. He is quite alive. You're alive, right? Tell everybody that you're alive. Oh my god. He's not saying anything. There must be something wrong. Is it his...
This is not proof of life. This cat is CGI. Trauma says, I was more referring to the fact that many of these breeds are fundamentally broken as animals because they've gone through hundreds of years of breeding to be good pets rather than animals. Well, yeah, they're domesticated. We've domesticated them. They could not survive in the wild. Jackson says Togo was a solid dog flick. You know, I've never seen Togo. I am familiar with it.
His vegan diet? Oh no, wait, no. I don't think cats talk.
I am a big Willem Dafoe fan, though, so I probably will check it out someday.
So, yeah, I think he's a normal functioning cat. As you can see, he's quite alive and quite fine. He is a big, strong kitty who doesn't want to be here right now, but he's a good cat. And here is our little rabbit chicken.
How can it be healthy? Okay, let me ask you a question. Look at this apartment. It does not look like it's a very big apartment. Considering his setup here, this cannot be a very big place. Maybe 400 square foot? How many fucking animals are in there? How many animals does he have living in this fucking apartment? How can that possibly be healthy for the animals and for himself and for his roommate back here in the corner? He's like, hey, are you live? The burner says animal deep fakes. They're everywhere, man. Gotta be careful with these vegans.
She has been on a vegan diet since we've had her. She's an old bunny. But yeah, even rabbits can be vegan. And this is the vegan food that we feed our puppy, Mai, the big dog. This is Benevo puppy formula, vegan, of course.
So that's why they can't afford a bigger place. These things are expensive. Jackson says this proves nothing. This guy should provide some research. If you were to go to his YouTube channel, if you look up vegan gains, he's constantly using disingenuous statistics to prove his worldview. Tarami says, I really can't wrap my head around keeping pets and at the same time being against animal cruelty. Well, that's a big discussion in the vegan community right now. It's happening. It's popping off. Like, is it ethical to have a pet? Is that a form of oppression? And I wish I was joking, but no. Those are the conversations that are being had by, in my opinion, mentally ill people that promulgate their ideas on anonymous message boards and on Reddit, as I found out over the past few days.
This is, again, Benevo, and this is suitable for cats and dogs. This is wet food. And this is Benevo ready meals.
Like, if they just ate meat, they could buy a farm. You know, they could buy some place with some property, some place for these animals to live free and run around and be happy.
Again, vegan. This is for dogs only. This is just some of the food that we feed our animals, but we've been feeding all of our animals Benevo. They seem to do best on that, but there's a lot of different vegan cat and dog foods. And depending on your animal's preference, they might prefer a different food. They may do better on a different food, but this is just what we found work best for our animals. And if you want your cats or dogs to go vegan and not die, then I would suggest you go check out Vigor. And if you check out the discount code down below,
how many dogs and cats do you think have died because people didn't know how to do it right? or do it in a way that at least would get them to 7 years.
You can go over to Vigor and get 10% off of any order. They have a wide selection of vegan cat and dog food, and also.
Do you think this is sponsored by this, or do you think this is just out of the goodness of his heart? Curious.
Vegan friendly pet accessories. So check out those links, and as always, keep making those vegan, and don't let your cat and dog die on a vegan diet gains.
What a relief.
Oh, shit. Well, I got to stop it there because I don't want to get content claimed again. I don't want to go against YouTube's rules, the overlord's rules, because he's using music. All right, so we're going to check out one more Earthling Ed, or Ed Winters, that guy that was on TV debating somebody about this stuff. I'm assuming he looks good in this, because why else would he post it? You know?
All right, we're going to talk about veganism, a slight change in topic. With us is a vegan activist and campaigner, Ed Winters. Hello to you, Ed. He's written a book called This is Vegan Propaganda. He's better known.
He looks like a lame Prince. He's kind of got the same facial features, the same facial symmetry as Prince, except not nearly as cool.
Known as Earthling Ed. He goes around the world trying to convert the most unlikely people to his cause. Here he is at a rodeo in Texas.
I get it. And I understand that. And all I want to do is just chat to you about it. No. It doesn't. I used to. What about my shoes?
Your car, your leather, and everything.
No, I don't drive, so that's fine. My shoes also, they're just fabric.
No, I just walk everywhere. I just fucking walk everywhere, dude. Yeah, I'm sorry if you took an Uber there and that doesn't count for some reason because you don't own it. Trauma says, I was thinking a less handsome Jared Leto. Trauma says, maybe it's just the hair. That's fair too, I think. Yeah. He should have a big tattoo across his forehead. Damaged. Save the animals. If you want to be serious about it, you got to go Moby style and get giant black block letters on your skin that say animal rights and vegan for life. You know what I'm saying? Forrest Yule says, soy great for the beta boy that wants tits. Travis says, I don't drive, I take the cab. Gaming Dragon says, he looks like a woman with a beard. Yeah, he does look, if anybody, I don't know if people saw it, but the Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire went on Dr. Phil and talked to a femme man with a beard. And he kind of looks like that. I agree.
Yeah, because you don't have to hurt animals, right?
Okay. Brave, Ed. I mean, do you ever fear for your safety?
No, not really.
No, not really. What's brave about that? Do you think like people, they just assume like, oh, you come here with a contentious thing that people disagree with. Don't they want to just beat you to death in the streets as if that is like the median perspective of people? They might tell you to go fuck yourself, but they're probably not going to do anything. They're not going to hurt you. They're not going to say anything like that other than your feelings, maybe. Gaming Dragon says, beta.
Really, because the majority of people I speak to are very reasonable and we can open up and have conversations. Just sometimes when we go into places, obviously at rodeos where it can be more heated, it's more likely there's going to be a little bit of animosity. But by and large, I always have very productive and fruitful conversations with people. And
what turned you into a vegan?
Well, there was two things that really led me to
I watched these Netflix documentaries and it changed my life. Gaming Dragon says, is that a Ocasio-Cortez? It looks a little bit like her. I can see this. Maybe it's her brother. Travis says, people underestimate how confused people are at this kind of aggression. Yeah, I agree.
Veganism. And the first was I came across this story about a truck crashing on the way to a slaughterhouse near Manchester. And the truck was carrying about 6,500 chickens. And the journalist had said that hundreds had died from the impact, but there were hundreds more who were suffering. Some were running into oncoming traffic. And I started to feel sympathy for chickens, which I'd never done before. But in my fridge was a KFC because fried chicken was my favorite food when I used to eat animals. And so I was feeling sorry for chickens, but also consuming them.
Well, buddy, you know, KFC's got a new product. I would suggest you go check out Die Antinatalist's channel. She reviewed it. The vegan chicken nuggets. Yeah, pretty powerful stuff.
And paying for them to go to slaughterhouses to have
their life taken from them. So there's a bit of a paradox. So I thought about my values when it came to animals, and I thought about how I viewed my relationship with non-human animals. And I said, if I'm against animal cruelty, then what could be more cruel than subjecting an animal to a life where they're farmed and exploited, mutilated, have their autonomy denied to them, and then are ultimately taken to a slaughterhouse and put in a gas chamber?
Like, this is what it is. He made a personal, emotional connection with the plight of the chicken. And then that reframed his entire worldview because he thought of himself as the chicken. He didn't think about, like, what do chickens practically feel or think. He was just like, what if I was a chicken and I was on the highway and I was about to be run over by a truck? Jack says, how many rodeos is this guy going to? Seems like a real waste of time. Well, probably, but in fairness, if you're out there trying to be an advocate for something, go to the Coliseum, go to the battleground. Trami says, if someone walks up to you and says, you shouldn't be wearing those shoes, you go, wait, what? Come again? You don't punch them first chance. Exactly. It's not just that it's confusing. It's that I don't think people organically, because they disagree with like a stranger, suddenly become violent. And this is something the media tries to propagate, this idea that we're all just like these fucking animals, these wild animals. And if we're not like on the progressive side of things, that, oh, you just must be a fucking beast. You just want to lash out at every chance you have, Hagbert says, oh, sweet sheltered Tarami. Of course you punch them. Jackson says they like to say mutilated a lot. Yes, because it's emotionally charged.
Or have their throat cut. So that turned me to vegetarianism. And then about 8 months later, I went vegan because I saw a documentary called Earthlings. And at that time, I had a hamster called Rupert, who was like my pet at that time. And I remember looking at Rupert after watching this documentary, which is very objective about what happens to animals and pretty uncompromising when it comes to the brutality of what we do. And I remember looking at my hamster Rupert and saying, he's a little individual with a personality, likes and dislikes. And I thought about all the animals who are exploited for dairy, eggs, meat, and all the other ways that we harm them for things.
It's like, when I tried to stick that paper towel thing up my ass and have him go up there and just root around, and he just didn't like it very much. Changed my whole world. I don't care what they do in An Officer and a Gentleman. I don't care.
We just take for granted in everyday society.
Or American Gigolo. Oh my God, American Gigolo. Sorry, Jesus Christ. What's going on?
And I thought about how I could morally justify that. And I realized that there was no moral justification to arbitrarily and unnecessarily exploit someone else when I don't have to.
All right, Ed, just stay with us. Nick, I'm going to ask all of you, actually. Yep. Are you a vegan? Have you ever considered being a vegan?
I've never considered being a vegan.
He says, fuck no, lady. Fuck no.
Nothing but respect for people who are vegans. My partner's daughter is a vegan, so this Christmas I cooked my first ever vegan Christmas.
Did you?
I did. I also had somebody who couldn't get out of the country who was Muslim, so I did halal, and I did a turkey as well. So it was like being a restaurant.
That's impressive.
I know. I did all three, Joe. I did all three.
Jenny, what about you?
I am very impressed by Nick's.
We might invite you next
year. I'm not.
He's like, I'm surprised this dumb old white fuck actually cared enough to make the people at his house happy.
Vegan. I'm not.
And would you ever consider it?
Probably not. I mean, I like corned beef slice and gravy and pork pies and Scotch.
Just great points, guys. He's like, no, I just like the way they taste. That's all it is for me. That's all it is for me. I just like a good burger.
Eggs, and there's meat. There's a very fine pie shop in Darlington called Taylor's, and I'm a very keen customer, and I just couldn't do without it. But I like vegan food as well. There you go.
Well, I think if you had to define it, I would be a flexitarian. I try not to eat very much meat, more for environmental reasons. But I just think veganism is a big challenge. I think it's great advocating for people to eat fewer animal products, but it's.
Oh, look, the voice of the youth. The voice of the youth.
Such a lifestyle commitment. I have lots of friends who are vegans, and you really have to be quite a good cook to make it work.
Andrew?
Well, I respect everything that Ed is saying.
Yeah, that's the barrier to things. It's like, oh, I can't make them taste good, so fuck it.
Believe in animal welfare. I believe that we have a duty to animals to care for them. But I think that if people choose not to eat meat, to be vegan or vegetarian, that's freedom of choice. So people should make their own decisions.
Personal
Ed
choice.
can make his arguments, but the rest of us have to decide what's best for us. I don't think it's something that it should be, you're evil if you eat meat, you're a bad person. I do think that the fact should be there and people should be able to make their own decisions in a free society.
Ed, would you like to try and persuade Jenny, for example, who loves her pie shop in Darlington?
Absolutely. I mean, Jenny, the question that we have to ask ourselves is what has higher value, sensory pleasure, the enjoyment we get from eating these animal products, or the lives of these sentient beings? Because when we say that we are allowed to do what we do to animals because we enjoy
It's like I have 3 talking points and I will repeat them ad nauseum no matter who I'm talking to.
they taste, we're saying that the 15 minutes or so of sensory pleasure that we get from consuming them has higher value and is worth more than their entire existence. Because of course, when we eat animal products, including dairy and eggs, an animal's autonomy has been denied to them. They've been exploited throughout their entire life, and they all end up in a slaughterhouse where they're put in a gas chamber or have their throat cut.
All right,
so that's
hang on.
the question.
Jenny, are you persuaded?
I mean, I'm not.
Are you persuaded by this 20 seconds of of propaganda? Hagbard says sensory pleasure. Trami says he really is a one-trick pony. Yeah, and this is kind of ubiquitous. You'll find this across most of these people. After we get done with this, we're going to watch a few other people. So we'll see. We'll see. In my experience so far, it's pretty much this is it. It's like antinatalism. You watched one of them, you've kind of watched all of them.
I'm not anti-vegan. I enjoy vegan food, but I enjoy other things too. I do agree, though, with what's been said about information, and I think that us having a better understanding of where our food comes from, I think the more food that is produced here in the UK that we eat, the better. Farmers' jobs, very important. And actually, when we're looking at...
What does have higher value, taste or life?
Livelihoods. Livelihoods. We have.
But we can still.
All right, let's see what he says to this, because he's saying livelihoods, people's jobs, how they make a living, how they support their families. See if he has a different answer. I have a feeling he's not going to really address that.
But also the environment, and there are, I think that we need to. If I had my way, most of what I ate would come from the region where I live. It wouldn't be imported across the world and use vast amounts of water or take up rainforest to produce. I want to eat locally. I want to eat high quality, nutritious food. And
how are those animals killed, Jen?
He's like, I have the money to do so. Hagbard asked Prophet, if you're still around, Prophet, are these gas chambers a real method? I've never heard of this in terms of animal processing. And then Forrest Yule says, these vegans are trying to push eating bugs. Yeah, they most definitely are. It's like a globalist movement. Try the bugs. Eat the bugs. They taste great. Trami says, also, that girl who said she's a flexitarian was so lying. When people need to look good and say, I eat meat sometimes, they eat meat almost every day at least. I would 1,000% agree with that. It's a virtue signal. It's fucking weak sauce. Just own it. Just own who you are.
I know how they're killed. You've done actually a fair. Well, I don't need to because you just have.
No, Jenny, I'd like you to tell me how they're killed.
You might like me to, but I think we all know. What I want to do is eat a varied diet, and I'm not against anything that you're doing. All power to you. But I think as well.
Hagbard says, that was serious. I wasn't making an edgy boy joke. No, I don't think you were at all. I agree. Like I've never heard of that as well. The gas chambers. Gas chambering, sending animals to a gas chamber to die. I have never heard of that myself either.
Well, that it's fair for others who maybe have a different ethical framework to you to make the choices that they want to make and to support their local food producers.
Can I just pick up on something, Ed? Because in terms of this assumption by many people that going vegan is a healthy and healthier option, we've done a little bit of research, and Ian Givens, Professor of Food Chain...
Oh, thank God, a news agency did a little bit of research. What a world.
Nutrition Director of Food at Reading University. He warns about the risks that come with cutting out meat and dairy without replacing the nutrients they provide. Could include weak bones, osteoporosis, well, that is, I suppose, weak bones, and potential life-changing fractures in adulthood. Do you accept it's not an easy option in terms of being able to have a balanced diet and actually could result in you damaging your health?
Yes, it can, because most people that do this do it as like a fad, a fashion statement, a virtue signal, and do not think about at all the personal ramifications of this lifestyle. They're not educated on it. Jackson says they use carbon dioxide at times to stun them. Okay, well, that's interesting. I've never heard of that.
Well, it's easy when you're educated. And of course, we have to be educated on how we get our nutrients. And so the word you use, which is really important, is replacing. So, of course, if we switch from animal products to plant products and don't replace the calcium and the iron that we get from the animal products, then we will have problems. But once we recognize where we can get iron and calcium and the nutrients that we need from plants, it's just as easy as making those swaps. So everyone who makes a change and everyone who eats, which is all of us, should be, fundamentally aware of where we get our nutrients from, vegan or not. But it's still absolutely possible, which has been confirmed by the British Dietetic Association, the NHS, who have all said that a plant-based diet can be healthy, which of course means making sure that we're eating all the nutrients that we need.
Andrew?
Yeah, look, all this is fine. And I agree with what Jenny has said, that you are making great arguments and people listening can make the choices about.
What great arguments has he made? What arguments has he made? Like, what has he said that was like so compelling?
What they want to do, how they live their lives, what they choose to eat. So please carry on making the arguments you're making. More and more people are becoming vegans. I'm aware of that, and that's their choice. But we live in a free society, so people must make their own decisions about what's best for them. But I do really take on Nick's point about our farming community and the livelihoods of people. And I think that
And what is the cost of feeding a population, an ever-growing global population, by adopting this lifestyle? By what mechanism are you going to be able to actually make that happen? Are you going to be able to provide the well-rounded, healthy, nutritional, balanced diet this way? Are you going to be able to do that? It's a serious question. Travis says browbeating is an argument. Jackson says a healthy vegan diet is near impossible to achieve and impossible in the inner city. I think it's probably impossible most places because of how it's not cost effective for most people. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck. Most people have less than $500 of savings in their bank account. You think they're going to be able to just spend whatever to meet this lifestyle? Like the ethics of it, the morality of it, and they bring up animals. Well, and some animals, they're obligated. They're obligate to this lifestyle. You can make that same argument for the vast majority of people living in the world. You could say the same thing. Not to say that we couldn't do things better or differently. 1000% agree. But to suggest that like most human beings are also not obligated to these health choices, I think is a false paradigm. Travis says it's the same issue I have with many things we watch. The activists keep repeating points everyone already kind of know, but with more emotional coercion. I totally agree. Jackson says, I wonder what the percentage is of people who try to be healthy vegan and fail. It's got to be like 95% at least. It's a lot. In my anecdotal personal experience, in terms of people I know, yes, it's usually a fad. They do it for like 6 months to 2 years, and then they just go back to whatever they were doing before. Hagler says, well, stop being poor. God damn it. Why don't you stop being a bum? Why don't you just stop being a fucking bum?
Be made bigger, as Jenny was saying. Let's get more out there.
And locally home produced food is exactly what we should be doing, and hopefully Brexit will help us to do that better.
Well, I mean, on that, I think that is a serious point about doing the trade deals that we're going to do. I think one of the fundamental principles we must make sure we don't lose sight of is that our high food standards and the quality of the food we produce here is protected, and that we can make that food more affordable and available for people.
All right,
and not undermine it.
And just finally, Ed, what about Andrew's point about, and Nick's, livelihoods, about farmers, about that whole community?
Well, vegans support farmers and support farmers' livelihoods as well. But of course, what we need is a just and fair agricultural system.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Do you think he's going to describe it? Travis says, I recommend everyone get second homes where it's easier to be vegan. I totally agree. I mean, if you don't have a second home where you can get vegan products easily, What are you doing? You're a monster.
System that supports the planet, that supports us as humans, and the system that we have right now is doing the opposite. I mean, animal farming in the UK, for example, just animal farming uses 48% of the entire land mass. And yet when we look at our intactness of biodiversity, out of 218 countries, we were ranked 189. So there's a big problem where farmers aren't stewarding the land in the way that they should. So we need a different agricultural system, but that doesn't mean that we just disregard the livelihoods of animal farmers. It means that we help them transition to plant-based farming or rewilding, and they become publicly funded land managers who are subsidized just as they are now to recreate nature rather than to continue to destroy it.
Convinced, Andrew?
Well, some of it may well be correct. And
Convinced? Are you convinced by this very brief, broad statement?
the great thing is that we've got control of our farming policy again, and we can decide what our priorities are. We can decide if we subsidise farmers for doing different types, different usage for their land, and that's our decision now.
I wonder how he feels about Brexit. That's a good question. How does he feel about Brexit? Because he's making the argument that Brexit will allow for these more ethical methods, that the government can be more hands-on with how they distribute subsidies and whatnot, because they're not going to be beholden to the European Union. I don't know.
Now, so we can make our own choices, as the British people must make their own choice about whether they wish to be vegan, vegetarian, or continue to eat meat.
Nick?
Publicly funded land managers, what the hell are they? Just put the bloke or woman on his or her tractor and let them go and feed the sheep or the cattle and take them to market. It's been known fine for centuries.
But it's not.
Thank you. Like, he wants to. This guy is like anti-bureaucracy, anti-bullshit. Like, oh, you just want to add another layer of government to tell people what to do that will actually produce nothing other than line the coffers of bureaucrats. Thank you. Forest Fuel says they go vegan because they think they are better than us meat eaters. Well, I think that's, I don't know if that's where it starts, but I definitely think that's where it ends. Jackson says European food standards are far superior to the U.S. This is true. I wouldn't doubt that. It probably is. I don't know for certain, but I'll take your word for it. Trauma says, Jackson, I still only eat shit. Don't be fooled. Well, yeah, Tarami would know. CC says, just finished work. I'm a professional that doesn't watch streams. Laugh my ass off. Well, glad to have you here, CC.
Doing fine, Nick, is it? Because we know that animal agriculture is one of the leading drivers of climate change and results in the death and exploitation of billions of animals. It's the opposite of doing fine. We're warned time and time again by the UN, by the leading environmental organizations around the world that we need to change
one question, had you had powers, would you seek to restrict people eating meat? Were you to have powers?
No.
You would
no,
not.
I don't want to mandate things. I want to
I don't believe it. I don't buy it. CC says, I'm often surprised what passes for food standards in some countries. Yeah, I would agree. It's an industry, and it really has nothing to do with actually being good for you or being healthy. It doesn't. That's just reality.
Educate people to understand that there's a better, more ethical, more sustainable and healthier way ultimately
then you
that
must
we can
accept
farm and
people
use
have
our
other
land.
views.
All right, on that, Earthling
Of course
Ed.
they do, but we can have open conversations.
We can,
like
and I've enjoyed
And we've had a very...
Oh, he's got his Patreon link here too. Trami says, bullshit, Ed. Bullshit. Trami calls bullshit, and Trami's a smart guy. I'd take his word for it. What else we got here? So, we got a vegan activist leaves meat boss visibly shaken. And this is another kind of news segment where somebody is arguing. So now we're going to watch some different people. Let's see if the arguments are any different. Because Earthling Ed or Ed Earthling or Ed Winters, whatever he likes to go by, not very deep. Not very deep.
Taxpayers will be made to foot the bill after vegan campaigners created havoc with coordinated protests across the country yesterday. In Melbourne, animal activists chained themselves to vans to block the major intersection in Melbourne, causing commuter chaos.
We want people to stop eating any animal products whatsoever. We want people to stop engaging in the practice of medical experiments and cosmetic tests on animals. We want people to stop wearing animals.
Is this from like 1996?
Police arrested more than 40 people, even cutting protesters from their chains to clear the area. The Prime Minister has called these protests un-Australian, saying his government will support any affected farmers wanting to pursue legal action.
The Commonwealth is totally open to supporting them in a test case to show these.
Trummy wants to know, aren't you Aussie, CC? You can do something about these people.
Green-collared criminals that you don't get to go and pull the rug from under our Aussie farmers.
For more, let's bring in Chris Delforce, who's the director of Dominion, which is the documentary that sparked these protests. And
which, by the way, everybody, Monday night on D-Live, we're going to be watching Dominion. We're going to watch the documentary. We're going to watch it. I don't know if we'll get through the whole thing. It's about 2 hours, but it's going to be me at the very least, and I think I might have a guest or two, so we'll see.
Victorian Farmers Federation President David Joe Hinkie. Good morning to you both, gentlemen. Now, Chris, you released this documentary a year ago, so why stage these protests now?
Well, it's been a year since the documentary.
What a dumb fucking question. Like say you're just like, you're a true believer. Like, well, you made a documentary a year ago. Like, why do this now? Didn't you make a documentary? Trami says, oh, tempting, Sean.
Came out, and the fact is that much of what's happening on farms and slaughterhouses across the country is standard industry practice, legal practices every day, is completely unknown to most consumers. Most people don't know that the majority of pigs in Australia are killed in gas chambers, and the industry's been calling this humane for over 20 years. Anyone who takes just 2 minutes to watch some of that footage will see it's the furthest thing from humane, and hopefully by watching some of that footage or by watching the documentary Dominion, they'll begin to question what else the industry is saying is humane.
Okay, protesters stormed abattoirs. We're looking at these pictures now from Goulburn yesterday. We're hearing reports from Queensland that livestock is being stolen and that fences are being cut and animals are being caught in these fences running out onto roads. David, farmers, livestock.
These animals are not equipped just to be let go. It's actually a form of cruelty to do what they're doing because they don't know. They have no fucking idea. They're going to run out in the roads. They're going to get hit by cars. They're going to starve to death out in the wild. I mean, like, they're not actually doing anything other than making themselves feel good. Big Paul says, I'll join if my vegan diet doesn't kill me before then. Oh, you're definitely on the panel, my friend. I'll send you. You're welcome. CC says, these tossers make us all look stupid. Don't even get me started on the media here. It's garbage. And Forrest Ewell says, I can't click buttons all of a sudden. Am I stuck here? Well, CC's comment might be stuck on the screen.
Stock is their livelihood. What do you say to Chris on this issue?
Well, first of all, I've got to say that we're very lucky that we're in a country where we've got choice, and that choice is...
Anyways, thank you, Forrest. I appreciate it. What the hell is going on here? Hide. Oh, well, StreamYard's just totally shit the bed on me.
Whatever product you'd like to consume, we produce it. We produce it to a very high